I'm so upset. Oh my God.
Let's see how Earth responds to that.
Turks, Cenk Uygur, and my guest host today, Dave Smith, everybody. So great to have you here, brother. How you doing?
Good, man. Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. It's a lot to get to. The Iran war has restarted in earnest, and this is round 3. We hope the last round, but we keep hoping it's the last round, and Israel keeps dragging us back in or pulling us back in. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about their audacious plan to put Ahmadinejad in charge. That's a little bit later in the program. Ro Khanna was attacked by Israeli settlers on the IDF. Now he's being attacked by Israel first here in America. We'll get to that. And we're gonna start with a story of course, how Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic leadership has sold you out. So let's get going on that because there's a lot to get to. So we have a new bill saying that we should cut funding of $3.3 billion to Israel. That is so exciting, finally. And guess who's against it? Hakeem Jeffries. Can we say it together? Of course. Okay, so we're gonna tell you his hilarious excuses for why he's continuing the funding of Israel. We're gonna tell you about how he's gotten money from them, of course, right? And very recently, we'll tell you exactly how much. I've got all the facts for you in a second. But Dave, real quick in the beginning here, at first blush, your reaction, I'm sure you're shocked that Democratic leadership is supporting Israel behind the scenes and now in front of the scenes.
It's interesting, man, and I think that one of the things that people are waking up to more and more. I know it's a major theme of your show. It's a major theme of my show. It's something I've heard Tucker Carlson talking a lot about lately. And really something I think me and you have been talking about for a very long time is that wherever you fall on the political spectrum, if you're just being honest in assessing the American government, we have a two-party system, so they say. You know, so the system is openly rigged against third parties. There are two parties that are allowed to rule. We all know a Republican or a Democrat will be president every single time. And yet, when it comes to the issue of, say, foreign policy, monetary policy, when it comes to, like major important issues, there's absolutely no disagreement between the two parties. Now, the special relationship with Israel is one of those examples. It's not the only ones, but I mean, literally, when it comes to the Federal Reserve banking cartel over the economy, when it comes to the military-industrial complex, when it comes to the pharmaceutical complex, all of these major sources of power, the two parties are exactly the same. So what is that, Cenk? What do you have when you have a two-party system and both of the two parties agree on all of the most important issues?
Yeah. Sounds a little bit more totalitarian than we realize, and certainly is corruption. In fact, this is an excellent case of the corruption. So let me show you the facts on it so you can see it for yourself, and then I'll come back and talk to Dave more about it. So the New York Times explains that Tom Massey proposes a bill to take out the $3.3 billion that we normally send Israel, and Annie Carney at the NYT says proposal, which the House is expected to vote on as early as Wednesday night, will mark the House Democrats' first up or down vote in this Congress solely on the issue of cutting taxpayer subsidies to Israel. It comes as the United States and Iran have restarted their war, which Trump entered with Israel's urging. Now, good news, there's a bunch of Democrats that are gonna vote with Massey on this bill. Bad news, there's a lot of Republicans who are gonna vote with the Democrats against this. And so, but AOC's on the right side here, Ro Khanna's on the right side, a lot of good Democrats are on the right side, but the so-called leader of the Democrats in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, firmly on the side of Israel. But let's get to his hilarious excuses. He says, Sludge explains, Jeffries said he opposed the amendment from Massey because, quote, it is overly broad. Yeah, that's the real problem. And get a load of this, and would limit funding for humanitarian aid, refugee resettlement, peace building, and embassy operations. Yeah, we're giving Israel $3.3 billion for peace building? I mean, refugee resettlement, if you count ethnic cleansing, and humanitarian aid, that's going to humanitarian aid? No, it's going to 2,000-pound bombs they're gonna drop on Palestinian children. Do you see how much politicians lie to you through their teeth? And then the media, right, Hakeem Jeffries, giant humanitarian. That is why he is voting for giant bombs to murder Palestinians. Get the hell out of here, man. What a pathetic excuse. He's barely even trying. So they explain more. Hakeem Jeffries says himself, based on the extensive conversations we have had as a caucus, there are good faith reasons that will result in members voting in a variety of different ways with respect to the amendment. Moving forward, it is my strongly held view that for the good of Israel and the Palestinian people, American policy in the Middle East must change. Oh, great, so then you're gonna vote to change their funding. No, I'm not gonna change it at all. I'm not gonna use any of our leverage. I'm not gonna do any of that. But as I send them this giant thank you gift for the genocide, I'm gonna say, but one day you guys really should change your policy. And then he goes back and high fives with AIPAC, goes, and I got the idiots in mainstream media to write it. Oh, yeah, we're gonna get policy change later. Okay, so New York Times further explains, he made clear that he opposed the measure, calling it overly broad, as we told you. He would not seek to persuade other Democrats to vote against it, and he hinted the Democrats would insist that any future security aid to Israel be contingent on reining in human rights abuses against Palestinians. Oh, future money will be contingent on it, because one genocide's too tiny. I mean, if you do 2, 3, or 8 genocides, then maybe we'll take away $1. We haven't taken away $1 yet. We've added billions of dollars. Biden gave him 21 billion, Trump gave him 13 billion. These are all extra. We're about to merge our militaries. Okay, but now we go to the Jewish Insider. Jeffries also argued that the amendment would restrict our country's ability to confront Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist organizations in the region who are sworn enemies of both the United States and Israel? They're definitely enemies of Israel, but the only reason they're enemies of ours is because we made them our enemies by allying with the genocidal state of Israel. And interesting though that to the regular press, he's like, oh, because I want to help the Palestinians at a later date, and I want peace building and stuff. Then he turns to Jewish Insider. He's like, no, let's destroy Hamas and Hezbollah. Oh, interesting. Okay, so the issue is, of course, a little bit tough for Democrats because they're pretending to be on the side of the Palestinians. In fact, there's a lot of Democrats in a tough spot because they all have to kiss Hakeem Jeffries' ass. I don't believe in it. I think it's super dumb, but they all do it, to be fair to AOC, who we're about to show you here. But they all have to go, oh, I love Hakeem Jeffries. Oh, I am for the Palestinians. I am against that aid. But Hakeem's gonna make it pass? Yes, right? So here is AOC telling us why she still supports Hakeem Jeffries. Now, to be fair, this was a couple of weeks ago before this particular vote, but trust me, she hasn't broken with Jeffries at all. And again, to be fair to her, neither has anyone else. Watch.
I read just a part of what she said. I take your point. Do you still feel, though, if Democrats went back to the House, that Hakeem Jeffries is the right person to lead?
I've engaged in many conversations with Leader Jeffries, and for me, and we have a broad caucus, right? For me, I have made very clear that one of my priorities in determining and in a leader determination is securing public housing financing for New York City. And Leader Jeffries has made his prioritization for the residents of public housing very clear. And for that reason, I will be supporting Hakeem Jeffries for leader.
Okay, you get what's going on, right? So why was Hakeem Jeffries not going to support public housing and AOC had to twist his arm into it? He's like, oh no, I'm only for the rich. Oh, public housing, okay, fine. If you sell out on me being leader so I could keep funding Israel and the pharmaceutical companies and all of that, I guess I'll help public housing. If that's true, if her story is true, it's even more damning of Hakeem Jeffries. But now let's find out what actually happened. We go back to Sludge, who's actually a great organization. You should read them all the time because they talk about money and politics. And they're the only ones doing, not the only ones, but these days there's Dropside News and others and Intercept and The Lever. But national media would never tell you about this level of corruption. So they explain so far this cycle, Jeffries fundraising committees, including Jeffries Victory Fund, Jeffries Battleground Protection Fund, and Jeffries for Congress have received at least $420,000 from AIPAC PAC disbursements, according to Sludge's review of FEC records, including $149,300 that just came in a couple of weeks ago. And then look at that, Hakeem Jeffries voted exactly the way his donors wanted. Dave, what an incredible coincidence.
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you man, like even as I listen to you break all this down, there's something that's very encouraging about just the dynamics of the moment of where we are right now. Because you just think about the tremendous chasm between where like a statement like Hakeem Jeffries is and where the voters, the Democratic voters are. I mean, there's such a huge gap. It's hard to overstate it. You know, it is now at this point. I mean, super majorities of the American people are against Israel at this point. Amongst Democratic voters, it's like super duper majorities consider Israel a genocidal regime. Amongst and Cenk, you understand this because you've been like actually involved in political organizing as well. You really rely very much in political movements on your young volunteers, the grassroots organization. Okay, on the Democratic side, 100% of them hate Israel, hate Benjamin Netanyahu, believe he just conducted a genocide. And yet you have, the head Democrat in the country coming out here and saying that we got to keep funding this genocidal regime. And imagine, as you of course correctly pointed out, making any type of excuse that you want to. Oh, well, the money might go to some good things too. Like, yeah, if you send a bunch of money to ISIS, there might be some mosques that are built also, but there's obvious reasons why anyone would be against doing that. And so, anyway, I just, I would, if you zoom out on this thing, it's really only been since, October of 23, when really the world woke up to what was going on in Israel, Palestine. Attitudes have shifted in an unbelievable way in the last few years. And we really haven't had that many elections since then. But there's an issue here where like, there are going to be elections going forward. And I don't know how long you can keep being this far off from where all of your voters are. And I would also say, to people like AOC, it's unbelievable how much momentum and how much credibility she gives up by trying to like please both sides here or somehow still fall in line with the establishment. I mean, there's a reason why in many ways symbolically Mamdani is leading the insurgent democratic socialist movement right now in this country and AOC is not, even though she was more poised to be the leader of that movement. And I think it's because he's just kind of unapologetic on these issues. And why should you be? When you have pocket aces, you shouldn't be getting bluffed out by other people. Like, the same way Mamdani just went, yeah, no, I'm not going to Israel. He didn't apologize for it. He just went, yeah, my job is mayor of New York City. That's what I'm running for. And people liked that. And AOC, it just seems to me that if she wants to be kind of like the progressive darling champion, if she wants to run in 2028 and be able to blow Gavin Newsom out of the water, she's not doing the thing she should be doing right now. And this is obvious for anybody who wants to really win and be a populist left or right now. There is such a gap between where the people are and where the political establishment is. I mean, just think about it, Cenk. The country is more anti-Israel than ever before. And what's being floated out right now under the most pro-Israel regime, the most pro-Israel administration in American history, is a merger of the two states' militaries. Somebody needs to stand up and just say, no, I'm with the people. No caveats about this. I'm with the people. We want to stop funding this genocidal regime. We want to stop fighting wars on their behalf, period. I won't support anybody who's on board with that. Believe me, you say that message, you're going to have a lot more potential to run for president on it than whatever AOC just said.
Yeah, so I'll build on that in a couple of ways. So first off, there is one guy who is standing up to Israel on the Democratic side, and that's Representative Khanna, right? So he's trying to.
You see, Jeremy Scahill he took the knives to him today. Oof.
No,
Did you
didn't
catch
see
that?
No, what?
You're gonna go. So he was on. No, listen, and I'm not trying to like trash Ro Khanna or anything. I was just mentioned. I thought that might get a laugh out of you if you saw it. But so they interviewed him earlier over on the Drop Site podcast, Ryan and Jeremy and them. And at one point, Jeremy just really started grilling him about like the right of Palestinians to defend themselves against Israeli settlers and IDF forces, and he tripped him up a bunch. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to like trash Ro Khanna. You're right, he's been absolutely one of the best on this. But I would recommend people go watch that because I think Jeremy did a really good job as the great journalist that he is on pushing him on even where one of the better congressmen is on this, still kind of being short of applying basic principles consistently.
Yeah, and look, I could criticize Ro Khanna on other things as well.
Sure.
For example, like, why wouldn't you be against Hakeem Jeffries? Hakeem Jeffries is awful,
yeah,
right? So now, to be fair to Ro, he's the only one that's come out against Chuck Schumer and saying that he shouldn't be leader anymore, right? But that goes to my main point, which is, why is like the most aggressive guy on this issue, Ro Khanna, even he is, getting tripped up by Jeremy Scahill. Even he thinks Hakeem Jeffries is the water's edge, right? And all of the other Democrats are like, no, we think it's a good idea to not make a big deal out of what 80% of our voters want.
Yeah, that's right. That's the thing, right, Jane? Because like it would be one thing. Look, politics is politics, unfortunately, and all of us hate that in some way. But so hey, if 80% of the country was pro-Israel and pro-supporting this war, then maybe there's an argument for why you go, look, man, let's let's teeter around the edges, get some wins where we can. Let's tone down the language. But come on, man. As me and you talk about, one of the things that's kind of interesting, that me and you have in common is that we've been in this world of Anna too, of course, but we've been in this world for the last 3 or 4 years or whatever, particularly of having these like big profile debates on Israel on big platforms and stuff. And there's been this big national debate about this topic over the last few years. And I don't know, what can you say? I mean, we've just absolutely smoked the other side. Like, we've won this argument. The groundwork has been laid. I'm not like trying to say that we take the credit. We had enormous help from the Israeli government, and they really could not have made it an easier argument for us to win. But I'm just saying, like, you're in a position here where, depending on what poll you look at, but there's been several that had it at 50 points that Israel's approval has collapsed over the last 3 years. So like, why is anyone right now, and when they are doubling down and tripling down and smearing anybody who stands up against them in the most vicious way, and it's becoming more and more obvious, Jane, you see it all the time. Like, you're telling me, like, I don't know, it's like Anna Kasparian and Marjorie Taylor Greene are both evil. They have like nothing in common except for the fact that they're critical of Israel, but they're both exactly the same. Like, everybody who criticizes Israel on either side is getting smeared. Meanwhile, we're with the majority of the American people. I mean, this is the time, if ever, to stand up and tell the truth. And look, I mean, you see this is one of the beautiful things about the moment that we live in right now. But all of the energy is with the people who are critical of the regime right now. And of course, because it's delivered nothing for the American people. I mean, it's unbelievable watching Donald Trump launch into this third round of this disastrous war. He's lost it twice. He's lost it twice already. He's going to lose it a third time while everyone else can't afford their rent payments.
Yeah, so look, last two things on this. They say we have to be loyal to our leaders. Why? How are they our leaders? If they're opposed to 80% of your voters, I got news for you, they're not your leaders. So they'd be lucky to be followers. They won't even follow the overwhelming majority of their followers, of their voters. So look, the answer is super simple to anyone paying attention. So the only people in the entire country who are dumb enough not to understand this are legacy media reporters. Why do you think you'd be opposed to 80% of your voters when it's an electoral disaster? Because you got bribed to be? Because you just got $420,000 in checks? Because you've taken over $5.5 million from the Israeli lobby in your life? Like the New York Times couldn't piece it together. They're like, now he's gotten about $6 million from AIPAC and he's voting with them instead of 80% of his voters, even though he's the Democratic leader. Really, I mean, what do you want me to call you? You're either incredibly stupid if you're a national reporter and you haven't pieced that together, or worse yet, you're corrupt and you're not doing the news, you're doing propaganda for Israel and pretending it's the news. There is no third option because we all have eyes and ears, and unlike mainstream media reporters, we have brains. You vote against 80% of your voters, why? Because you took $6 million. This is not complicated. So it's disgusting the way mainstream media covers up for the corruption of our politicians and of Israel. Okay, so we were just talking about Roe. So Dave, let's go to a story about him actually. I'm gonna skip forward here a little bit and then we'll come back to the other stories. So Roe kind of went to the West Bank in an unsanctioned trip. Now he says he told the American embassy and the Israeli embassy so they knew, but he did not go on the official propaganda trip. And they are furious about that. You're supposed to go and kiss the wall and do whatever else to it, rub up against it, and pledge allegiance to Israel, and oh my God, and let's do the propaganda tour. He skipped all that. He's already done that 3 times, right? He's gone to Israel. He actually fought for the hostages to be released. He was one of the most aggressive in that. So he's like, I want to see what the Palestinian perspective is, so he goes to the West Bank. And then he gets detained by a bunch of terrorist settlers and terrorist IDF soldiers. So he comes back and tells people about it. Oh my God, Israel first is furious. So they're all attacking in unison. Before I get to those quotes from both Republicans and Democrats, first, Dave, your reaction to Roe's trip.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I mean, I've had a lot of people try to get me over on one of those trips, and I've resisted all this time. I still have never been. But I do think it is, I will say there is something, I'll just say this, as someone who's never been, maybe there's nothing creepy at all that goes on those like state-sponsored trips. But if there's nothing creepy that goes on, it is so creepy. They really make it look like there is. I'll just say that. Like the way they're so obsessed with everybody going there and going on the very specific trip that they've designated. And then, yeah, of course, as you said, they really don't like it if you go and go off of the guided tour. Yeah, I mean, listen, again, we don't really, there hasn't been that much footage of what happened that was put out there, but it seems pretty clear that he got stopped by some settlers. I think there's no dispute at this point that, yeah, there wasn't a military zone. They were supposed to be allowed to go there. And then the IDF came and sided with them. Now, if they want to argue that, oh, he should have like registered and let them know that he was going, I guess that's, they can say what they want. But the point is that you get a more authentic view of what's actually going on there if you don't go on the government trip and you don't let them know that a US congressman is coming in. And I think part of what's interesting is, and this is something that's come to light, that's a very ugly thing. I don't know how prevalent in Israeli society this dynamic is, but there certainly is a dynamic in Israeli society where they are like a bit resentful of us. And that's something that I think is surprising to Americans, because for the most part, we feel like, oh, maybe the people who we've just been giving, tens of billions of dollars to an unconditional international support to would be a little bit grateful. But as at least according to what Rokana said, like as they find out that they're Americans, that he's a congressman, this doesn't seem to change the attitude of anyone until they get the embassy involved. And that is kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, to your first point, the Israelis are like, it's a restricted zone. That's where we destroyed a Palestinian village and murdered a Palestinian American. You're not allowed to go there. Yeah, that's why he wanted to go there, to see that perspective. And you panicking about it gives us an indication of why it's so-called restricted, which, as Dave pointed out, is not even true. We'll get to that in a minute. And of course, they don't want anyone seeing the actual West Bank and the actual Gaza, and that's why they've murdered 250 journalists in Gaza. So now we come to the traitors in America pretending to be Americans, but who actually represent Israel. But it's a good thing I got their quotes for you. You guys can judge for yourself. You don't have to trust me on it. So here's the fake ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who's actually the ambassador from Israel. He says the left-wing activist who set up this stunt says the embassy's involved. That is not true. We did not know a member of Congress was coming. We would have said don't go to restricted zone. I wonder why. As facts come out, it's not helping the desired narrative, not held at gunpoint. So now, the American ambassador is supposed to represent Americans. And especially when an American congressman goes there, and he did ask, of course Mike Huckabee's lying, he's a giant liar, and he's lying on behalf of Israel and when he's supposed to be our ambassador. But you're supposed to protect the Americans in Israel. Instead, our ambassador attacks the Americans on behalf of Israel. It's like, how dare you go into their restricted zone? Don't you know they're murdering people? I mean, they're wonderful humanitarian, Christian loving Israel, and how dare you? And of course, Israel is superior to Americans, so know your role. So then Laura Loomer comes in, of course. So she says, if Ro Khanna hates Israel so much, why did he visit? To see the atrocities that Israel's committing? Anyway, Khanna is a Jew hater. Of course, everybody's a Jew hater if you criticize Israel, who wanted to create an international incident to distract from the fact that Iran is plotting to assassinate President Trump. Total Israeli propaganda, not remotely true. And our ally Israel alerted us to that intel, which helps them tremendously to start a new war. Oh, she didn't write that part. Or the new round of the war. Okay, so you got Laura Loomer, you got our fake ambassador. So far, nobody's surprised by that. Now we go to the Democrats. Wait, I thought vote blue no matter who. Unity, I heard that from Hillary Clinton, I heard it from Joe Biden. I'm sure it's true here, right? So Representative Josh Gottheimer gonna back that Democrat and 80% of Democratic voters, right? Oh, look at this, no, he's Israel's bitch, who could have guessed? He says, let's be honest, this was a publicity stunt. Channels exist to protect elected officials, and Khanna intentionally entered a restricted, unstable area without coordinating to provoke a response. By the way, it's not true. I'm gonna give you Israeli press showing that it was not a restricted area, but so he's lying on behalf of Israel. Almost all of our politicians lie on behalf of Israel because they get paid by Israel, and Josh Gottheimer, of course, loves Israel a billion times more than he likes America. I don't even know if he likes America. But why is it unstable, Josh? That's an unstable area because you're murdering the Palestinians there, including a Palestinian American, a young American who was killed, and Ro Khanna went and talked to his father. CNN went and talked to the same American father, and then CNN's convoy got attacked by the settlers and the IDF because they'll attack anyone who isn't an Israeli because they're terrorists. Okay, so finishing up with Gottheimer, he says, what's appalling is that Israel committed a genocide. I'm kidding, he would never say that. What's appalling is that Roe ignored requests to meet October 7th survivors, another lie, he met with them earlier, and hostages, a total lie, he helped to get the hostages out. Or to visit sites of the October 7th terrorist attacks, also a lie. Instead, riding the anti-Zionist wave, he used a trip as a presidential campaign cameo. You know who else is part of the anti-Zionist wave? 80% of your voters, Josh. Okay, but of course 100% of your donors are on the other side. And then Sean Spicer popped out of the bushes to say this. Let's break down this outrage. You entered a restricted military area on the West Bank without prior coordination and were stopped by IDF soldiers. Look at all of them yelling at the American and protecting the Israelis. He says, body cam footage shows you were not detained and were free to leave. It shows the exact opposite. Do you want to take this back the same way you took back being proud of Plattner? So this is the Israeli talking point. Oh yeah, so we slaughtered the Palestinians and we're murdering them right now in the West Bank. But Graham Plattner, got you. And the Israeli ambassador said the same thing. They're totally unabashed about attacking Americans. They love attacking Americans because if you're disloyal to Israel, they'll try to take your head off, and they know that an American press will help them. But the Israeli press oftentimes way more accurate. So we go to the Jerusalem Post. They say, it seems the Jewish settlers who stopped Khanna's vehicle from leaving the area believed that he had traveled illegally to a closed military zone. Khanna had said the group's van, surrounded by settlers wielding M4 rifles, he had been touring Kirbet Zanuta, whose Palestinian residents were forcibly displaced by settler raids in December of 2024. So there's the Israeli press saying what the American press won't. As it turns out, they explained. The area was no longer a closed zone. Even when it was, it had likely been so to keep settlers from harassing the Palestinians. The area's restrictions were not intended to prevent a US congressman from touring the site. Contrary to IDF's original reports, the soldiers did not try to move the settlers out of the area. The soldiers believed that they were temporarily babysitting a suspicious car as they waited for the police to show up. However, because this was not a closed zone, the soldiers had no right to detain Kana until police arrived. So, Dave, the Israelis lying to try to smear an American congressman, especially one that they're opposed to, I get it, even though we fund everything for them and they should be, on their knees thanking us and pleading with us, but instead they keep slapping us around. But then you have Democrats and Republicans and all the press, how dare Okada? And then they tell us, no, Israel has no influence in Washington.
Yeah, well, I love that just, because as you know well, more than most, it's like if you were to just listen to some of the Israeli propagandists tell the story, which I think is part of the reason why guys like me and you started really getting out and talking a lot about this after October 7th. I think a lot more people know about the history of Israel-Palestine or know about the conflict now than knew about it then. And for some of us who had been interested in it before that, it was kind of like, well, we can't just leave it to the Ben Shapiros and Dennis Pragers of the world because they'll give you a version of this history which is just cartoonish. Like, this is just, oh yeah, if you leave out 80% of it, then this is the story or whatever. And there's something where even just mentioning the settlers in the West Bank just destroys like 80% of the popular narrative that the Zionists want to push. Like, what are settlers doing on the West Bank? Wait a minute, you're telling me that the entire world has accepted that Palestine only gets 22% of historic Palestine, but Israel has to give them back that 22%. And the Israelis are just going yeah, well, we're just slowly taking all of it. We won't take it at once, but we're just slowly gonna take more and more and more and more of it. And of course, they've ramped that up in the last few years and they're continuing to. While they're more unpopular than ever. But so anyway, look, I mean, forget a Republican congressman or something like that, or dumb political commentators are kind of in a different category. But for the ambassador, to speak on behalf of the embassy and to just, at best case scenario, let's say here, Cenk, they don't know that Ro Khanna's lying about his story. And at best, at that time, it's this is his side of the story, this is their side of the story. They don't know. So they just immediately side with the government of Israel. There's something, and I gotta say, as you going to the other people, it is, as you mentioned this, Cenk, it's tough to find a parallel. If you could find any other example that me or you or anyone else, an example where we would immediately knee-jerk just side with a foreign government. I mean, there might be some governments that I don't think we should launch wars against for no reason, like Iran. But if a team of journalists went to Iran and they reported, Cenk, let's say they went, oh, they detained us for hours and wouldn't let us go, I wouldn't just immediately knee-jerk go, no way they did that. You must have been in the wrong. I mean, yeah. who is so subserviently, devout to a foreign government that, look, I'll even say this at the, when I first heard the story, I don't know. I go, okay, they're saying one thing, Ro Khanna's saying another. Let's see what happened. You know what I mean? What? But this knee-jerk loyal reaction is very revealing.
Yeah, so last thing on this, Dave, because I'm genuinely curious about this. So what your take on it is, because look, Ro goes out there, all this happens, and then so now, and he mentioned about being a potential presidential candidate, right? So now the world's gonna collapse in on him, and we all know it. The Republicans are gonna attack him, Democrats are gonna attack him. It's gonna be, they're gonna dig and dig and dig and try to find something wrong with him. They're gonna emphasize, you're gonna see nonstop negative coverage of Ro Khanna going from this day, and if he runs for president, all the way to the end of the campaign, right? So we all know that. We all know there won't be any positive pieces in media about Ro Khanna going forward. They'll all be negative. So what's your theory on why our media here in America, is just, in my opinion, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong about this, is totally on Israel's side. Like they're like, no, we can't see the AIPAC money. No, it doesn't affect the politicians. No, I'll never report that 94% of Congress gets money from the Israeli lobby. No, Israel's right about everything. So what's going on here? Why in mass is legacy media clearly 100% biased in favor of Israel?
Well, I mean, at least from my perspective, I think that, so there's been several issues or several waves, let's just say just over the last few years, where I thought the entire corporate media was in lockstep over different issues. I thought funding the war in Ukraine, COVID lockdowns, COVID vaccine, mask mandates, and all the COVID policies. Before that, there was, outside of the Fox News, Murdoch world, there was a real anti-Trump bias, Russiagate. There was real lockstep about that within the media. And right now, they're that way about Israel, or I should say, and throughout that entire time, they were always that way about Israel too. And I think that you're absolutely right, of course, to highlight the money in politics as a huge part of this. I would also just mention that, like, and I don't say this, people could view this as I'm just speculating or being a conspiracy theorist, but I actually don't think that's what I'm doing here, because I'm not alleging anything. What I'm saying is that, like, if you see 5 cockroaches on top of the carpet, you can pretty well be sure there's a whole lot more underneath the carpet. Like, with all the money in politics that we know about, how many illegal bribes do we just not know about? I mean, it is not that hard for people to get, into the business of concealing, moving some money around here. And we know about so much corruption. But then, of course, as you know, Cenk, it's not just the money, it's the carrot and the stick. There's the money, and then there's the fact that if you don't take the money and you're critical, you will be beat. And there's real consequences for that. There'll be money put in against you now, and you'll be smeared and you'll be tarnished among certain groups. And then I think there's also really is just an ideology that develops, and people within the realm of like I think there are a lot of people who work within the corporate media who actually somehow create a worldview where being on the side of Lockheed Martin and big pharma companies and JP Morgan Chase and all of this somehow is actually the right thing to do. But the bottom line is kind of this, and I thought, as disappointed as I was, of course, because this was my guy, but when Thomas Massie got defeated down in his primary, I know you guys did a lot of great coverage of that campaign, including interviewing Congressman Massie about it. But look, I mean, okay, they had to pour $32 million in, and still, because I know you guys were covering this, and still the only way they could do it was just by getting the boomers out. All the young people were with Thomas Massie. And then when you look at those numbers, you go, there's no way they can possibly do this. Like, they couldn't spend the equivalent of that on a presidential race. They couldn't put $32 million into every little Kentucky local size district across the country. And anyway, so I guess just my point is that even though they're all locked in this in the mainstream media, like you said, there's just super majorities of the American people waiting here. And I gotta say, it seems to me like the political dynamic right now is almost like 2014, 2015, where it's just begging for who wants to be the Donald Trump. Like, there's this who wants to come in and just run on these ideas that are really popular that no one else wants to say. Like, hey, build a wall and stop fighting stupid wars. However you feel about those were very popular, and no other politician wanted to say that. And right now, it's so obvious, Cenk, what anyone could just stand up and say. Be against the special relationship, be against the wars, be for transparency, Epstein files, JFK files, all of that, against anti-corruption. I mean, you don't even have to get into left-right issues before there's a candidate that could win on this stuff, on just being against the corruption.
And so, last thing I'll say on this is that, look, you see Massie, Khanna, MTG, they vote to release the Epstein files, defund Israel. And so if you're wondering why others don't do it when those positions are so popular, look at what happened to those three. they were targeted and annihilated. Trump took out Marjorie Taylor Greene. AIPAC and Trump tag team to take out Tom Massey. And now the entire media and the entire uniparty is against Ro Khanna. So this is how Israel destroys their opponents inside this country so that we serve them and not our own people. So I agree with Dave 100%. The first American leader brave enough to withstand all that, fight all the way back, wins the presidency, and actually does it easily. If the establishment media is against you, whether you're on the right or the left, that is a great thing. The establishment media is despised by the American people. The only people who still listen to them are the morons in Washington who live in that toxic bubble where they're like, oh, I want a good quote from the New York Times. You could shove that quote right up your ass, man.
Well,
no one cares.
I mean, look. And I meant to say this too, Cenk, because as you said it before, and I think this is part of what happened. This is part of that's at least 50% of why Trump won is because the media hated him so much. That was a big plus for a lot of his supporters. And then of course, a lot of things have happened in those years. Back then, when in 2016, 10 years ago, when Donald Trump pissed off the media, maybe that wasn't something that that say more left-leaning young people would have been interested in or be like, oh, I like that. But then they stole the election from Bernie Sanders, and then they did it again in 2020. And by the way, Cenk, as you know better than anybody, that whole that phrase, vote blue no matter who, that was just the slogan they trotted out as they were stealing it from Bernie Sanders. Yeah, vote blue no matter who meant shut up and take it as we steal it from your guy. And essentially, how you got really excited about this anti-Wall Street message? Well, we're gonna need you to take that excitement and vote for the most beloved candidate by Wall Street. You know what I mean? And so that it's like that whole vote blue no matter who, what you're finding out now, it's like, oh yeah, that never actually meant vote for somebody who wasn't in the guy we wanted. That just meant shut up and take it as we steal it from all of your guys. And now you're seeing as the Democratic Socialist wing, or whatever you want to call it, I'm not sure that's the best name for it, to be honest, but is ascendant. Now that vote blue no matter who thing is not something that you hear too much from the establishment. How many of them never even endorsed Mom Donnie, right? I mean, and those who did had to have their arms twisted to do it.
Even AOC didn't endorse any of those DSA candidates because they never meant it. They're totally full of crap. So of course that's true. But this system's about to break. The walls are breached. So 2028 is gonna be super interesting. All right, we're gonna take a break here. When we come back, the latest on Iran and the disaster that's about to unfold. We'll be right back.
Have you been there?
All right, again, we're reading these blind. Let's go to members on TYT.com. Capsized Guam Dragon says, Democrats think blue wave means Democrat wave. That's why they suck. Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't had a Democratic leader represent Democratic voters probably my entire life. And if you think Obama did, that's funny. Dirge says, they just need to delay until our militaries are merged and Israel can steal our money behind the scenes. Yeah. Checks out. He also said, no, then Bloated Ego said, geez, I really can't decide who's worse, Schumer or Jeffries. These are all people who are on the left and would rather vote for the Democratic Party. But our party keeps slapping its own voters across the face, stuffing their pockets full of Israeli money. But again, big drug money, big oil money, defense contractor money. They're giant liars and they think that's okay. New York Times and CNN will cover our ass. They'll lie on our behalf and we'll get away with it. Well, we'll find out. Nebethet says, I was listening to Asman when I learned about Lindsey Graham and I didn't bother confirming he was actually dead until I watched Marjorie Taylor Greene on TYT. These strange times are kooky. If we can ever get all these factions to unite on common ground and then deal with the nuance of the wedge issues, that is what keeps me hopeful. Seeing how alike we are outside the realm of elected officials is my how. Just saying Jeffries must go, we need to hit the refresh button on Washington. So, brother, you're exactly right. So we have been told that we're each other's enemies and that you have to fight other Americans and you have to hate each other. and that is to keep us divided. We actually agree on 70% of material. And as Sean Ryan said when I was on his podcast, he said, we get American sovereignty back and then we deal with the rest of the issues. All right, back on Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Dave Smith with you guys. Dave's show is part of the problem. Make sure you check that out, even though ironically he's part of the solution. Okay, so now let's go to our next story.
The Middle East, believe it or not, is coming together. We're getting rid of the bully of the Middle East. Iran was the bully of the Middle East. They bullied Iraq. They bullied every country. There was fear all over the Middle East with other countries. I understand that, but there was fear. But there's no fear anymore because their military capability has been knocked to hell, and there's no fear. I think the Middle East is coming together like it's never come together before.
So that's just an alternate reality. Okay, so we're gonna get to how the war is restarted and some of the devastating parts of that. But before we do that, Dave, he's talking about a bully in the Middle East. I mean, like in Washington, there really is, they live on a different planet. Like the rest of us think the bully in the Middle East is the country that attacked 7 of its neighbors, that's Israel. But they're pretending Iran that got attacked by us and got their 49 leaders executed on the first day, that they're the bullies. Yeah. What is this?
It's a ridiculous, inverse of reality. And of course, Donald Trump himself is one of the things that was most appealing about Donald Trump is in his typical kind of lack of filtered manner, is that he would say, yeah, we got a bunch of killers on our side too. We killed so many people in Iraq. I mean, think about all these wars we fought. We just blew up all these buildings, killed all these innocent people. I mean, the chutzpah, forget even Israel, Jake. I mean, the bullies of the Middle East are the United States of America's federal government, I mean, dude, the campaigns we've fought over the last 25 years, the nerve of us to turn around and say that anybody else is the bully. I mean, just orders and orders and orders of magnitude more people have been killed by US and Israel-led foreign wars, and most of the US-led ones were really inspired and supported by Israel. Anyway, look, man, it is stunning to see how weak a position Donald Trump is in right now as he launches this third, as you, I think, correctly basically broke down, right? There was the first phase of war, which was direct military action. The second phase was the blockade and the blockade of the blockade under the kind of ceasefire thing. Then we had this brief MOU. Now we're back to fire and blockades and blockades of blockades. But of course, the big difference this time, Cenk, right? Like we're on this carousel that we keep riding around and around. And now we're back to, we're gonna destroy them. We're gonna get them to capitulate. But the major difference this time is that in the last walk back round, like just last week, Donald Trump is now officially walked away from all of the original war aims, all of them. He gave up on the idea that they can enrich uranium for civilian purposes, which is all they've ever done, Cenk. That's the entire thing here. So he gave up on the idea that they're not allowed to do what they've been doing this entire time. Not only did he give up on they can't be friends with Hezbollah anymore, they included a ceasefire on Hezbollah's behalf in the memorandum of understanding. So clearly he walked away from the idea that we're gonna say they can't, have terrorist proxies or whatever. Walked away, he even publicly walked away from them developing ballistic missiles. They gotta have some missiles. So it's all over. We're fighting now over the Strait and Lebanon, two things that were not an issue before the war. The Strait they closed during the war, and Lebanon, Israel launched their bonus war in there as soon as they lured us into this one. So, yeah. I mean, look, man, how do you spin this thing? And of course, as I imagine everyone listening to this show knows, there's just no reason in the world to assume that this isn't gonna go just like the first 2 rounds of it went. I mean, all of this bluster and talk about how the Strait is open and we control it and we're taking a fee off it now. Well, how are you going to do that? And if you could do that, how come you didn't do that? It's been 4.5 months already, Jake. Now, this war that we were guaranteed isn't a forever war and is weeks and not months. It's 4.5 months into it now. If they could have done that, they would have. And the Pentagon's own assessment, I saw you and Anna covering this on the show, the Pentagon's own assessment said that it would take 6 months to militarily open the Strait of Hormuz, and that would only be after the war was concluded, meaning we couldn't do it if the Iranians were still shooting their little $20,000 drones at us, which they can do. I mean, what do we want to do here? We want to see how long the global economy can take this strait being closed. Well, Donald Trump already admitted we can't take it much more. And then we want to get back into the game of what, Jake? We're essentially trading $20,000 Iranian drones for $600,000 US missiles.
Yeah, this
how long you want to trade that game before you lose?
This is going to end very poorly. So let me give you the updates on it, and then we'll talk about the disaster that's about to ensue. So as Politico explains in a letter to Congress dated July 10th, obtained by Politico, Trump stated that the strikes that began on July 7th represent, quote, military action consistent with my responsibility to protect Americans and the United States interests, both at home and abroad. So it's official. He sent a letter to Congress. We're going back in for round 3. And then Trump said, I want to give them a chance at making a deal. And they shot first, and that was a big mistake that they shot first because we've been knocking the hell out of them. They're very difficult people. It depends on what you mean by shooting first, and besides which, Iran is no longer participating in the peace negotiations because there are no negotiations. So I don't know what Trump is talking about. We're back in quote total war. The Intercept explains Iran claimed Sunday that it quote demolished the US Army's surface-to-surface missile base in Kuwait, killing 3 American military personnel. US Central Command responded, there are 0 reports of US service member deaths or injuries in the region. Later, they had to revise that. So I'm going to tell you about how we've been lying about the casualty numbers in this war. They're far worse than we reported, or the American media reported and the US government reported. So let's continue along those lines. The Pentagon's Iran war death toll, which was last updated Friday, the Intercept continues, went up by 1. Wait, I thought it was 0, went up by 1. Pentagon statistics show a sailor died in what was provisionally deemed a non-hostile fatality with a quote, pending caveat, meaning it could later be revised to a hostile death. It was not immediately clear whether the new death listed occurred in Kuwait. So, okay, so there's one more death, and they're obviously lying about how that person died. Was it in Kuwait? We're not sure yet. And was it really 1 or was it 3? We're not sure yet. But interestingly enough, the official number of dead and wounded in the US for US personnel stands at what? So 200, that's a big number. 300, that's a huge number. That can't be right. Oh, it's at 428. Did you know we had 428 casualties? So it's almost never reported. Oh, look, it's a 11% increase since the first ceasefire between US and Iran was struck on April 8th. So we had a ceasefire where we had an 11% increase in casualties because we hadn't really ceased fire. So the Intercept continues reporting by the Intercept previously found that the Pentagon's official count of dead and wounded personnel is a gross undercount stemming from what one US government official called a casualty cover-up. The Defense Casualty Analysis System, which tracks deceased, wounded, ill, or injured service members for Congress and the president, is missing hundreds of known casualties. And then now let's go to the Iranian reaction because it has not been pleasant. So since we did 140 strikes the other day, this is our 4th day in a row of bombing the hell out of Iran. There's no ceasefire left at all. So their new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, says, we pledge that we will avenge your pure blood and the blood of all those martyred in these 2 wars from the criminal and disgraced killers. This revenge is the demand of our nation, and it must certainly be carried out. Okay, so there goes peace at all. And I mean, what did we expect? We've just been launched hundreds of bombs against Iran. Of course, they're going to want revenge, let alone the fact that we killed his father and 48 other leaders, but more reporting from Foundation for Defense of Democracies. They explain Mujtaba signaled to the Iranian diplomats that they could give it a try, but won't go anywhere. It's boxing in negotiators with statements that suggest the path to survival goes through escalation rather than engagement. Anna has been saying all along they're being played for suckers. There are no real negotiations. We're just reloading. And hey, look, we got sea drones now. We launched the sea drones. We restart the bombing, and we say peace is over. So they're getting the same, vibes that we were getting, and realizing that all of this was probably fake. So now, interesting report from the Wall Street Journal, where they explain, the guys who were fighting against the regime, the ones that were protesting, are now on the side of the regime. Why? Because if you bomb their families, they rally around the flag. Everyone who isn't a moron or a propagandist already knew that. But let me give you 2 quick quotes from the story. State broadcaster IRIB, which has long been managed by hardliners, abruptly cut off lead negotiator and Parliament Speaker Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf as he tried to make the point that an earlier hardline president of Iran had also held talks with the US. So that's Iranian state TV basically going, shut up, okay, we're not interested in negotiations anymore. And they say, Hamshari, a paper published by the hardline municipal government of the capital, Tehran, ran wanted poster-style images of targets, including Trump, Secretary of State Mark Rubio, Defense Secretary Hegseth, Benjamin Netanyahu, and several European leaders. But Dave, I thought the most interesting part of that Wall Street Journal piece was they talked to several different former regime opponents, including one 34-year-old who's an entrepreneur and had gone out and gotten beat up very badly to the point where he couldn't walk for a couple of days by the Iranian regime. Now he's put on an Iranian uniform and saying, I'm showing up for duty. And they're reporting, this is kind of an ironic twist, that a lot of young people not listening to the mullah's rules about clothing etiquette, right? Coming out without any kind of head covering or hijab, young guys coming out in jeans and t-shirts and tattoos, but saying we're ready to defend Iran. So as we expected, it looks like the war, on top of all of the other problems, was deeply counterproductive in getting rid of this regime.
Yeah. And totally predictably so. I mean, it's been like this in every theater in the global war on terrorism. And this is a very typical thing. It's human nature. Like if you just think about it, not saying these situations are one-to-one, but just to give you an idea of like how to even think about these things. If you could picture for me and you and the audience members who are our age or a little older, if you remember back in the Occupy Wall Street days, right? Big protests out in New York City and other big cities in the country, right? Huge protests, people very upset, kind of left-wing populist in nature, very upset about the banker bailouts and stuff. Barack Obama was president at the time. There's huge protests in the streets, but did they want to overthrow Barack Obama? Well, no, not necessarily. That wasn't exactly the goal. They didn't like the banker bailouts. They wanted things changed. Does that mean because they were out in the streets that therefore they would support China overthrowing Barack Obama? No, that doesn't follow at all. And just because people were out in the streets and furious at their regime that they live under in Iran, that doesn't mean that they would support foreign aggression against, you come in here, I mean, just imagine, you come into Occupy Wall Street and the Chinese go, we're with you, we're socialists or communists also, so we're with this movement, and then they murder 200 little girls on their first day of bombing in an effort to overthrow our government. What do you think? Occupy Wall Street would have just been like, well, we're out on the street, so we have to support. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Of course, it didn't work this way. Look, the bottom line is that the Iranian regime was never as unpopular as many of the kind of Zionists and expat hawks made it out like they were. But you could see this right there. I mean, look, it's the most tangible thing, and it makes Donald Trump furious. It's part of what's driving him crazy right now. But he made this whole thing, this narrative about how the people were supposed to rise up and take control of the government. And now Donald Trump, sounding like one of the idiots me and you debate on Piers Morgan, is saying the reason why the people aren't overthrowing the regime is because they slaughtered, now it's up to 52,000. They slaughtered, 20 million of them. And that's why I know. Meanwhile, we can all see the videos of the funeral for the late Ayatollah. There's people out in the millions chanting "Death to America," pro-regime. There's just no reason to believe any of that is true. And in the same way, I've been in this for a long time, and I've been reading these hawks far more than anybody probably should read what they have to say. And every single time we're greeted as liberators narrative, and they're just wrong. They just predict the way people are going to feel about this. You stop dropping bombs on people's apartment buildings. It doesn't make them love you. You launch wars of aggression. It doesn't make regions more safe. And it's just, we've played this out too many times.
Yeah. So that same guy who was beat up by the regime said, look, I thought they were coming to be against the regime. Then they said they were against our entire civilization.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah, so he's like, so I grabbed an Iranian flag and showed up, right? So that's how it works. But last thing, Dave, this is the most important part. Look, I think that this next round is going to be the end. Like, I don't mean the end of the war. I mean the end of all these pretenses. We're gonna hit what I call the unraveling. And I think that there's no comeback from this because we burned the bridge behind us. Now, not only Iran, but no one would trust us in peace negotiations. We constantly do fake ceasefires, fake negotiations, and then we double our attack. So the Iranians are not going to come back to the peace table after we betrayed them over and over and over again. I mean, we signed a memorandum of understanding. The Iranians, by the way, again, never reported by our press, or almost never. Their top reason for being upset at the US throughout this entire so-called ceasefire was, they said, look, we said you have to withdraw from Lebanon. You said yes. And then Israel not only didn't withdraw from Lebanon, they went further into Lebanon. So this ceasefire was a giant lie. You never did any of it. We're not going back to the peace table. So Dave, my sense is, look, America thinks, Trump at least thinks, no, we got this. We now control the strait. And so Iran's leverage is gone. Iran absolutely believes they control the strait. So I think we're going to go into a war, and I think we're not going to come out of it for a long time, and it's going to lead to economic calamity, a global economic collapse, and then I would argue then trigger political revolutions in a lot of countries, including this one. So is that too much, or do you think that it could be as calamitous as I think it is?
Well, it could be. I don't know if it will. Look, I'll say this. Okay, so obviously there's something even in Trump's narrative, like even in Hegseth and Trump's narrative right now, you can see there's this obvious hole, this obvious kind of contradiction where it's almost like if I were telling you, hey, I'm in a fist fight with this guy, and you're like, how's the fist fight going? And I go, dude, I've beat the crap out of this guy. He does not want it anymore. He's ready to give up, but he just keeps throwing punches at me, so I'm gonna have to go back and beat him up even more. And you're like, wait, but if he keeps throwing punches at you, it sounds like he hasn't given up yet. Sounds like he's still fighting. So, even in their own narrative, they're admitting this. And clearly, look, what we're seeing here from the beginning of this war is that the calculation changed. Iran was waving the white flag to the Americans for 25 years until this war, including up to and through the 12-day war. That ridiculous, response where they call ahead and make sure all the missiles are shot down and make sure they don't actually kill anyone. They wanted to avoid this war desperately, especially the previous Ayatollah. That calculation changed after they killed this Ayatollah, launched this war, new people in power, new calculation with the new war. But even after this memorandum, obviously there was an admission by Donald Trump that he lost the war and he kind of gave them everything and gave up on all the war goals. But he still tried to mess with them. He still went, well, we'll agree with, as you mentioned, they violated, the US violated the memorandum of understanding right away because Israel continued their war in Lebanon, and Donald Trump and JD Vance and Marco Rubio continued threatening Iran, which was already a violation of the memorandum of understanding. What happened in the Strait is a little bit more of a gray area, but it's still like America was trying to mess with them. They were trying to make a deal with Oman behind their backs. They were trying to make a deal with Israel behind their backs. They're trying to do what they always do. Okay, we'll agree to this, but we'll mess with you. And Iran very clearly went, no, not good enough. then they're happy to go right back to this and close the strait again and go right back to hostilities because they know the position that they're in. Cenk, in terms of your prediction of this being a disaster, I don't know why. After hearing last week on the walk back, Donald Trump admit that the global economy couldn't take any more of this strait being closed, and Donald Trump's unique ability to just totally contradict himself by the end of the day. I've never seen anything like it, including Joe Biden in his most senile. I've never seen a president who can just 100% certainty take one position and then walk away from it the next day. And so I guess I'm a little bit hopeful that he just walks away one more time. But I don't think any deal is happening. I think you're right about that. I think it's either just walk away or we go into the escalation ladder where I do agree with you, like real disaster is on the other side of that. But I agree with you. I don't see if there's any way. I don't see how Donald Trump can make a deal with anyone ever again.
Yeah,
his word is meaningless. So, but I'm hoping he just walks away and you're wrong about the disaster, aspect of this, but we'll see.
From your mouth to God's ears. But speaking of Trump flip-flopping, as Dave pointed out, today is Taco Tuesday. So yesterday he said that we're gonna charge the toll of 20%. And right. Today he realized, oh right, that would mean gas prices would go up because oil goes to the strait. He's like, yeah, never mind. Yeah, maybe you should have thought of that yesterday before you blurted it out like an idiot. So, but what Dave said there at the end is critical, guys. We no longer have any room for negotiation. The Iranians won't come back. Nobody will negotiate with us anymore because we've lied in every negotiation and it hasn't been close. So now we're either gonna further escalate till we're in absolute meltdown, or we're just gonna have to go, I guess we lost, and just run away. So those are not good options, and that's the only things that are left.
Well, just to say, it's not that they're such bad options. I mean, honestly, we never needed a memorandum of understanding anyway. We never, look, dude, if there was, as you know, Cenk, if there was overwhelming consensus among super majorities of the American people, the one thing we knew was the last thing we needed was another unnecessary, unwinnable war. A regime change war in the Middle East. I mean, come on, just the dumbest war ever launched in American history. And now, of course, Ron Paul used to say this. I remember when he was running for president in 2008 and 2012, they used to go, sir, what's your military strategy for Iraq? How would you get out of there? And he used to say, we just marched in, we can just march out. And it's the same with this war. We don't even need to make a deal about the strait. They'll figure it out amongst themselves. All the incentives are to open it up. And as long as we get out of there, Cenk, what's causing the whole problem here is the imbalance that we impose with our total support of Israel. We can just walk away. That's the best case scenario right there. The best case scenario is we get a time machine, we go back in time, and Donald Trump never launches this idiotic war. The second best case scenario is we just walk away right now.
And that's exactly where we are. All right, everybody check out Dave Smith, Part of the Problem. YouTube, where else can they see you, Dave?
Oh, all over the place. Just say my name into the mirror and I'll appear.
All right, Comic Dave Smith on X. All right, we appreciate you, brother.
Thank you for having me, brother. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now we're gonna come back for another hour for you. And then we've got Operation Joy after that, where we release joy into the world. But one more hour of the news where there is an amazing story about how the Israelis were trying to get Ahmadinejad to become the new head of Iran. Wait, didn't Ahmadinejad want to wipe out the Israelis when he was the president of Iran? Oh, that was all fake. That's so interesting. Plus, another collapse coming from the AI debacle, and that has begun now. So all those details when we return.
I like tacos.
Hey Andrew, what's up?
Hey Cenk, you ready to make the switch?
Yeah, I guess.
I promise it's easy, universal, basic, and you get income.
Yeah, you keep saying that. But you sure I'm gonna have coverage?
Of course you will. You think I would have bad service? I'm Andrew Yang, of course I have good service.
All right, let's try it. But I'm so bad at tech. So, wait, should I do this thing of the hashtag business? Andrew, you're still on, right?
Yep.
Oh, I see it. Oh, wait, I don't see. Oh, yeah, I do see it. Here we go.
I actually did not realize that you'd be searching in real time, but I love it.
How much do people actually normally say?
Yeah, the average American is going to save between $500 and $1,000 a year on Noble.
Yeah, no. You know what I'm going to do, Andrew? Are you ready to become a Noble member? The 2 buttons are do it and go back. There's no going back. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Here we go, Noble Mobile.
Oh my gosh, I just called you and are you now on Noble and not Verizon?
Why didn't you tell me it was going to be super easy?
I know, man. Now you just stay away from your phone and watch the money roll in.
I can do that. Here you go, phone, yeah.
What the f? Jank, you still there?
Andrew? Oh, well, at least I got Noble Mobile.
It was really just one take. The whole thing is wild.
It's in my shoes. It's in my shoes. Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Jank and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning. They seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
I just love you.
All right, back on TYT, Jank and Elliot Morgan. All right, hey Elliot, do you ever get Captain Morgan?
Ooh, no, I have recently gotten Dr. Morgan though. Is that cool? I just graduated, so I have to throw that. Legally, I'm required to mention that. But you don't have to call me that. It's okay.
So you are technically Dr. Morgan?
I am now officially Dr. Elliot Morgan.
Okay.
I don't even think they can take it away from me either, so it's pretty exciting.
So you can either go with, I'm the captain now, or I'm the doctor now.
Yeah. Okay. Depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah. All right, I like it. All right, shout out to eManny79 or 9, I should say, who joined through tyt.com/join. And yes, that is where we need some contributions and some members for sure. We are besieged, no question about that. So if you can, that'd be amazing. You can hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join. All right, let's go to our next story.
When will this madness stop? When he took his position, Secretary Mullen said that his goal was to get the department off the front page of the news. Well, you're back on the goddamn front page now with 2 innocent people gunned down in broad daylight.
So a little less than a week after ICE agents shot and killed Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Texas, ICE agents have killed another person. But this time, there might be consequences. That's interesting and unexpected. Elliot has the story.
Yeah, all right, so yesterday, federal agents shot and killed a 26-year-old Colombian man by the name of Joan Sebastian Guerrero in Biddeford, Maine. As it stands right now, we are not aware of how long Guerrero is actually in the country for, but what we do know is that he was legally authorized to work in the United States and he had a social security number. Neighbors described him as a hardworking father who was trying to build a stable life for his family. He was often seen driving a small white sedan, which he used for DoorDash deliveries. He was behind the wheel Monday morning when the immigration agent opened fire, shooting into Guerrero's car. So, what happened? Well, according to the Department of Homeland Security, immigration agents were trying to serve a deportation order. Federal officials said ICE agents tried to conduct a traffic stop after an illegal alien departed the residence in a vehicle. An officer discharged his weapon when the driver didn't stop, according to a department spokesperson. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, video surveillance showed Guerrero's white sedan traveling aimlessly through an intersection as if the driver had lost control. An unmarked SUV then rammed the car, bringing it to a stop, and federal agents pulled an apparently lifeless Guerrero from the driver's side door. So according to witnesses, the car's front windshield had at least 4 bullet holes in it. It also took the DHS 12 hours to release a statement on the matter, and when they finally did, they said the ICE officer fired his weapon fearing for public safety as Guerrero attempted to flee. But of course, there were no details on exactly how he was posing a threat to public safety, and body cameras weren't worn either. What a shocker, and according to Senator Angus King's office, he wasn't even the target for the warrant. It doesn't seem like his wife and daughter, thankfully, were in the car with Guerrero at the time of the shooting, but they did witness the aftermath. According to one resident who lived near the intersection where the incident took place, I watched a wife fall to her knees looking at her husband's dead body on the ground. I watched a little girl crying with a little pink backpack on because she's never going to see her father again. So horribly tragic. Thoughts, Jane?
Yeah, so look, this is clear. I know some portions of MAGA love the idea of mass deportation, but what people can't understand, and it frustrates me greatly, we talk about it on the show all the time, is that maybe other people don't have your perspective. Okay, so, and I say that internally for the left wing as well, right? And or whatever group we're in, populists, etc. I understand other people think differently, right? What they can't understand is the rest of the country, which is an enormous number now, is sick of all this. We don't want mass thugs in our streets, and we don't want them gunning down people, whether they're American citizens or not. They're human beings. And sometimes the extremes on the right will be like, oh yeah, they weren't citizens. Is it okay to murder a non-citizen? I don't think that's okay. A human is a human. Now, look, you can say they don't belong here. You could say that, if they're criminals, which none of these guys who have been killed are, that they need to be locked up. Those are normal arguments. But saying you don't care about shooting innocent people in our streets, what have we become? What is this? This isn't America. And Elliot, the number one thing I'm worried about, and in this case, luckily now they're starting to backpedal, but the thing that I was most worried about and continue to be worried about is that they are trying to get us used to all these deaths. Yep. Like that it becomes normal that mass men kill people in American streets. I don't ever want that to be normal.
Yeah. And they're doing a pretty good job of it so far. Also, I mean, this is the second deadly traffic stop in less than a week. So evidently, ICE has finally realized that maybe we should stop doing traffic stops, at least for the most part, I guess. So according to multiple federal sources, ICE agents will cease making traffic stops, which have played a significant role in the agency's operations until now. A federal source told Fox News that ICE will continue conducting vehicle stops only for those considered to be the most egregious targets with serious or violent criminal histories. That's weird because I thought they were already doing that. Now, of course, ICE is not happy about this, with one senior ICE official telling Fox News the change is horrible but needs to happen. Another senior ICE source said this policy change will be temporary. According to the source, the new policy will remain in place until new training on vehicle stops is approved by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen and given to agents operating in the field. I personally can't get over the excuse of, oh, he was a threat to public safety without even offering any kind of like detail on exactly what that threat was. It feels like they've run out of mileage, no pun intended, on constantly saying that these people are trying to hit ICE agents with cars. So they're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But Cenk, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, we're gonna reassess traffic stops. Okay, let me reassess it for you. Don't kill people on them. And look, it's not an exaggeration. We all saw the video. Renee Good was nowhere near the officer that was taping her and in front of her car for no reason. And he'd already moved to the side when he executed her by shooting her in the side of the head, right? So don't tell me your life was in danger. No, you wanted to shoot someone. Alex Preddy, they took his gun away and they knew it. They knew he was unarmed and 6 of them shot him. It was an execution. Those are 2 American citizens. So yeah, okay, maybe you should train people not to immediately murder the person that they've stopped. That's not that complicated. And I guess, Elliot, the part that I'm a little bit encouraged by is that they're taking a step back. And why am I encouraged by that? Not just because of that action, but because even the Trump administration that wanted to do the mass deportations, that wanted thuggish government, jackbooted officials of the government in our streets killing people, are thinking, oh, this is so unpopular, even Trump's walking it back.
Yep. Yeah, and to your point that you brought up earlier, like I think it's really easy for whatever side of the aisle you're on to just imagine this case in like isolation, like, oh, okay, how tragic, another person. But I think people tend to forget the collateral damage involved in this, like the fact that there are children involved, the fact that there are spouses and partners who are going to go without their loved ones for the rest of their lives. That is a lifelong thing that these people are gonna have to deal with that I don't think gets factored into a lot of the equations when people start talking about, well, were they legal? Well, were they doing this? Well, were they doing that? And the fact that so many people are constantly siding with the powerful, with those in authority, I think is a real issue. But hopefully, like you're saying, Cenk, they will figure out that, yeah, something has to change here.
Yeah, last thing I'll say on it is that, I was hopeful during when Trump came into office, not about him coming into office, but that there would be a more unified resistance, right? And so a lot of people met that with skepticism, saying, oh, no, the podcasters are never gonna be on our side. They're Trump cultists, and they're gonna love the mass deportations. They're gonna love everything he does, including killing people in the streets. And it looks like they didn't love it. And that the podcasters were a huge part of the pushback. And when he lost those guys, he really had no leg to stand on. So, am I crazy for thinking, hey, that was a nice like silver lining in an otherwise horrific mass deportation and killings, in the streets, to like, hey, the country that was divided, they voted for, a lot of those podcasters voted for Trump, but then they come back around and go, no, too far. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, when you start losing the podcast bros, that's usually a pretty bad sign in terms of your popularity and where that's gonna land. I also think it goes to show that like that is sort of the best case scenario for like how these podcast bros function in the political world. Because like, yeah, as a bro does, like if they're gonna be buds with you, you're gonna feel great about yourself. And if they're against you, you're gonna feel horrible about yourself. So right now they're seemingly making Trump feel bad because they're all abandoning him, along with all the other politicians and along with many US citizens.
And it's relevant to Trump, not because he cares so much about their opinions, but because they got him elected, right? And so if you're mad at them for getting him elected, I totally get it, right? And we were on the other side. But I'm thrilled that there's, in the midst of super darkness, whether it's the war, it's ICE, and all the things that are going wrong, that now finally people are beginning to reach out to other Americans and going, hey, I know you voted the other way, or I know you were on the other side on a different issue, et cetera. But why don't we join in an alliance here to stop this? And it's not just about the war, it's not just about Israel, it's even on ICE. So the fact that those guys have now kind of come to our side on it to some degree, and to a large enough degree that it made a difference, that's great. And by the way, the people who should get the most amount of credit easily are the ones who actually went and protested in the streets, right? Who put their life on the line for other human beings. and who not only stood up for them, but stood up for what America's supposed to be, right? And so I want to thank all you guys and your heroes for doing that, and we deeply appreciate it. All right, we're gonna take a quick break here, guys. When we come back, the AI apocalypse begins. We're on X now, so I'll read some of those comments. AF Oak Jody says, conservative here, and I now have more in common with you guys. That's amazing, right? Exactly what we were just talking about. From the first hour, Alex Major 1 says, Dave Smith is amazing. Icus55 says, I love these guys. Let's go to YouTube members. Jack Morris, I love the Young Turks. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys, really. It's beautiful to see. Shorty Demac 203 says, primary Hakeem Jeffries, too late in this cycle, but never too late for the next cycle. Well, how about we start with one other Democrat, or one single Democrat in the House opposing him. Lorraine Ortega says, shame on Hakeem and Democrats supporting this war funding. Couldn't agree more, Lorraine. Economic Con says, love being a member and love the coverage. Please cover TACAVA. They want to balance the cost of the vet benefits by taking them from future vets. This is a dangerous precedent. Yeah, to that point, there's behind the scenes, as they spend so much money on Israel's war, so much money on ICE and all these disastrous things that almost no Americans want. They keep cutting and cutting from the things that we do need, including veteran care, including food stamps, including Medicare. So it's just a worst case scenario, as we all feared. Now on TYT.com, Salvi Dragon says, I also wondered why celebs have been silent about what's happening to the people in Palestine. Israelis must have a larger grip than we can see. Oh, yes. If you're anyone that is in the public spotlight and you oppose Israel, they will try to fire you, ruin your life, and attack you in every way. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Elliott with you guys. Look, if you want to start up a website or merchandising store online, the answer is super simple. It's Shopify. So we use them, so we know how good they are, and we tried everyone, and they're definitely the best. So they handle all of the details for you, the international shipping, so many other things that otherwise is so hard to do on your own. They make it super simple. They've got a purple shop pay button, and that's the best converting checkout on the internet. About 10% of all commerce online goes through Shopify. So sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TYT. That's shopify.com/TYT. All right, so now let's go to our next story. Now economists are saying, this AI thing is going to be a disaster. I don't want to say told you because we're super worried about how big a disaster it's going to be. I'm going to give you some predictions on how awful this is going to be for our economy. But it's good to see that economists are waking up and going, oh, right. It's not going to be rainbows and unicorns. It's going to be an enormous amount of unemployment, let alone other parts of it. Elliott has a story.
Yeah, so over the past few years, economists have largely been on the fence about the potential impact of AI on the livelihoods of American workers, with many highlighting how historically concerns about technology have tended to be a little overblown. But a new statement signed by almost 200 economists and tech leaders, including 16 Nobel laureates, seems to signal a shift away from skepticism and toward the need for immediate action. In fact, the title of the statement is just, "We must act now." But what it says is only almost as notable as who actually signed off on it. So first, the statement: 1, AI may become radically more powerful over the next 10 years. 2, This could drive an unprecedented transformation of our economy, larger than the Industrial Revolution, but unfolding over a vastly shorter time frame. It could bring risks, including large-scale job displacement, as well as opportunities such as major gains in living standards. 3, economists, policymakers, and technology leaders must act now to understand the economics of transformative AI and to build the incentives, guardrails, and institutions needed to steer AI in a direction that complements humans and benefits society. So while the statement does not offer actual specific policy guidelines, it does seem to signal an overall shift in the general attitude of economists around AI, at least according to Eric Brynjolfsson, a Stanford economist who also helped put together this effort. There's been a notable change in the profession. I still see a big gap there, a big mismatch, and I'm kind of worried that we're not going to be ready for the tsunami that is coming. That sounds alarming, and to make matters a little worse, the call may be coming from inside the data center, and that's because among the signatories are people from Google as well as OpenAI and Anthropic. There's Sarah Frier, OpenAI's finance chief. There is Jeff Dean from Google's DeepMind, and Jack Clark, a co-founder of Anthropic. So altogether, there are 16 signatures from people associated with OpenAI or Anthropic who are joining with economists and other tech leaders in urging immediate action. And according to Brynjolfsson, so a lot of the difficulty facing economists here boils down to contradictory measurements that make it very difficult to draw a conclusion. So on one hand, the unemployment rate has been mostly holding steady. However, white collar payrolls have been contracting now for years, something one economist said is virtually unheard of outside a recession. Labor market researchers now are finding that the disparity is very likely due to the fact that AI's impact is appearing as underemployment and workforce exits rather than just unemployment. Ultimately, economists seem a little less worried about the technology itself and a lot more worried about the time and how quickly it might transform the economy and how unprepared we seem to be. So, Cenk, thoughts on AI and the coming apocalypse?
Yeah, so I'm an alarmist on this, and unfortunately, I'm worried that I'm going to be right. For like 90% of my predictions, I say I hope I'm wrong. So, for example, when I said I think the Iraq War is going to be a disaster, I hope I'm wrong. So yes, we've been around forever, and we were on air when the Iraq War was getting started, before it got started. So in this case, I'm going to do another time travel piece here, because in the 1990s, back when I was a Republican and Bill Clinton was in office, I said, look, I might be against Bill Clinton, but I got news for you guys. It's never going to get better than this. Like, the unemployment was at a record low, inflation was at a record low, the economy was booming, everything was going right. By the way, later I became a Democrat partly because of that, right? I was like, well, it was never gonna get better than this if we have a Democratic president. So it was, of course, as you all know, or a lot of you know, it's more complicated than that, because then Bill Clinton deregulated everything and led to disaster, right? But so at that time, I said it's never gonna get better than this, not because I was worried about the future, but because I was just noting in my lifetime and in what I've studied in American history, I don't know that we've ever had an economy that good, right? So now I'm saying the same thing, but for a completely different reason. I'm not sure that it's ever gonna get better than today, not because today is so great, but because I'm nearly positive tomorrow is gonna be worse, and the day after that is gonna be worse, and on we go until, best case scenario, we elect someone in 28 and they begin the turnaround in 2029. But that means we've got a brutal stretch of years coming up here where things are only gonna get worse. So now we're completely back in the Iran war. There's no chance of peace left. So that's going to be a nightmare in a way that like no one understands right now. They're acting like it's no big deal. I'll come back to that. And now you add on top of this the AI collapse that we've been telling you about now for a couple of years. So it's just a matter of logic, guys. So there's two factors here as to why this is so obvious. Number one, this is like the 200th time in a row where the people working in the AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, are going, watch out, watch out. And the rest of the economy and the politicians, the media are like, nah, don't worry about it. They say that they're gonna destroy the world, but nah, I'm sure the guys working on it are wrong. Okay, but by the way, when the guys making money off of it say, "Oh no, it'll be great, and we'll all have personal robots, and they'll cook salmon for you," they're like, "Yeah, that we believe. Yes, that's awesome, right?" Ignore the naysayers, right? No, I wouldn't ignore the naysayers, especially when they're coming from, when the call is coming from inside the house, right? But the second part, Elliot, is just obvious logic. So, what does AI do? Even for the guys who love AI, they say it makes things more efficient. So, and they are constantly bragging. You go on CNBC any given day, okay, whether it's the website or the channel, and they're like, great news! Another company has fired 10% of their employees. Now they think it's great news because their stock price goes up, right? Because they're like, oh, you became more efficient. You'll be able to maximize profit better. Another company could cut 25% of their workforce. This is great news. Is it? Is it? Because everyone, as I've been telling you for now about 2 years, is in a race to cut 25% of their staff. What do you think that happens when all the companies do that? So we're gonna hit 10% unemployment super easy and super quick. And I don't know where it stops. I'd be shocked if we didn't get to 12% unemployment. I think the outer edge might be 25% unemployment. But guys, these numbers, you have to understand, are catastrophic. Once we get to 10 to 12%, we're not in a recession, we're in a depression. So who the hell's gonna buy all the crap you're making with AI? So no, Elliot, I'm worried this is gonna be worse than anything we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
I worry you might be right. I feel like there's always there's a reaction and then there's an opposite reaction. And when it comes to the AI stuff, you have on one side all of the tech gurus being like, this is gonna be the most incredible thing in the world. It's gonna transform society unlike anything we've ever seen before. And then there's a reaction where a lot of folks who I'm friends with are like, there's no way that's true. It's gonna bottom out. It's not gonna be that advanced. It can't continue to grow at this rate. I don't really think that's true. I think that might be wishful thinking a little bit and hoping that this isn't gonna be as bad as it seems. And while this is anecdotal, I do know plenty of folks who have already lost their jobs to AI or are literally training their AI assistant to replace them. So that just sounds depressing on top of all the financial stuff. But the point you said, Cenk, I think is the most important, is how is anybody gonna be able to afford all of the products we're so efficiently making if nobody has jobs anymore?
Yeah, so my son is 16, so he's having to begin this college application process. And everybody we talk to is like, well, obviously don't go into coding, programming, anything related to computers because those jobs are all gone now. Okay, so what are we doing here, right? And what they mean by that is the future jobs are gone. Now, that's already a problem because now they're forced into other industries, but those industries are also losing jobs. So panic has started to set in the younger demos, but in Washington, they don't care about younger people at all. They kind of despise younger people. So they're like, oh, young people lost their jobs. That's because those whippersnappers are lazy, right? No, you don't know how good you had it. Oh, back in the day, we used to walk in the snow for. Shut up, shut up. It's much worse today. And these are empirical facts, guys. And I've lived through those. I'm old enough to have lived through all those different eras, right? All the way back to the Revolutionary War. No, but seriously, affording a house now is much more difficult. It's not close. This is data and numbers, right? The student debt is infinitely worse. Debt overall is way worse than it was before. So now you're loaded up with much more debt than you ever were. Everything is more expensive. Housing is so expensive you can't possibly afford it. The other day, Donald Trump says, oh, I like that the housing prices are up. Well, okay, Mr. Billionaire, I'm glad you're happy that your gaudy mansions are worth more. But by the way, even the real estate thing, the only silver lining here is that when the economy collapses, housing prices will also collapse because no one can afford those prices. So, guys, I wish I had better news for you, but you got to buckle up and brace for impact. We're about to go into some super dark times. And so in those times, we got to band together. We got to find every ally we can get and basically do a political revolution before things get worse. So I'll just say one more thing here. Look, the reason why our hair's on fire, but if you're watching corporate media, theirs isn't, it's because the only metric they care about is the stock market. And you remember a couple of months ago when Pam Bondi was testifying and she's like, oh, don't worry about the Epstein files because the Dow's at 50,000. Well, now the Dow is over 52,000. The maniacs on Wall Street keep buying and buying and buying. So the maniacs on corporate media are like, hey, everything is great. Because remember, in corporate media, almost all of them are millionaires, at least the ones on cable news. And everyone they know is millionaires. So they're like, what do you mean? Our housing prices are so high, we're rich. And and we fired 10% and 20% of our staff, so I'm even richer. And so they're having the time of their lives in Washington and New York as the rest of the country implodes. So stick together here, it's gonna be rough times. And remember who did this to you. It was the politicians and their infinite corruption. They didn't prepare for what's coming at all. The only guy I know that's preparing for the AI apocalypse, as always, is who? We all know it now. There's like literally only one guy working in the Democratic Party at this point in Washington, Ro Khanna, right? So he's the only one opposing Epstein files and getting that released, opposing Israel, opposing the war. I mean, so last thing on this, Elliot, because how is this not a layup if you're a Democrat?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and how are they not like all over TV going, what the hell? This is crazy, we're gonna lose all the jobs. Because at a bare minimum, even if you don't mean it, once the jobs collapse, then you'll seem like you were, ahead of the curve. I mean, do they have a pulse? What are they doing?
The Democrats aren't into being ahead of the curve. They kind of just like to wait and see how things go and assume it'll go great. And then when it all collapses, then they blame the Republicans. And it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah. So, and if you're waiting for the Republicans to help you, oh my God, okay? I hate to break it to you, brother, but they're not here to help you. Okay, they're here to help their corporate donors. And obviously, as we just explained, so are the Democrats. So that's why we're gonna need a political revolution, and not a physical one, but one where in 2028, we vote almost all the incumbents out. So at least you have that to look forward to. Okay, we're gonna take a break here. When we come back, the story I promised you earlier, this is an amazing story. You remember the guy who was saying that we should wipe Israel off the map, the Iranian leader? Ahmadinejad from about a little over a decade ago. Turns out he was on Israel's side. Whoa, that is weird. Well, we'll explain. I have a theory on why. We'll do that when we return. All right, back on TYT during the social break here. Let's go to Twitch. Sepacro 1223 says, can we ever love MAGA guys? I don't think I ever will. Okay, so two super important things here, guys. Number one is you don't have to love. Okay, so if like Dave Smith voted for Trump, you just saw him, and he now hates Trump, right? So, but you don't have to love Dave. You just have to say, oh, thank God he's on our side on the war, on Israel, on so many other issues now. By the way, he's not on our side on a lot of things, including Social Security, right? So, head on a swivel, find the allies in different categories and different policy issues and bring them in. But that doesn't mean that you go, okay, I give up my independent judgment. I'm now strictly a Tucker Carlson fan. Hold on. Okay, which issue are we talking about? Second of all, remember when we say MAGA, what does that even mean? The splinter group, the podcast bros, the independents, and some portion of MAGA have already split from Trump, right? What remains is super toxic MAGA, right? And so I got confronted by one of those guys in the airport just the other day. I came back from Philly and some guy thinks he's gonna do a gotcha and he's like, oh yeah, Jake Uger, why are you a communist? I'm like, bro, I run a media company. How could I be a communist, okay? And he's like, well, you were denigrating Lindsey Graham. So the guys we like that splintered off, they hate Lindsey Graham. But super toxic MAGA still likes Lindsey Graham. So don't worry, you don't have to like those guys. Okay, we just find allies on issues where we could do a real alliance that works. right, back on TYT, Cenk and Elliot with you guys. So easy way to help the show, ring the bell. Super easy, doesn't cost you anything, takes about 2 seconds. Keep up with the show that way. If you can, hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks members and be part of the brave American citizens that are saying we've had enough of corporate media. We're actually gonna support independent media that's actually being honest with us. That makes a big difference for us. Also, tyt.com/join. And when you join through TYT, during the commercial breaks, we actually read your comments and interact with you guys so you get more content. And if you're already a member through YouTube, no problem. Go to tyt.com/connect to connect your accounts. That's free because you already paid for membership. And once you connect your accounts, then you can go and get the member stream on tyt.com so that you can get the interaction with you guys during the commercial breaks. Okay, Elliot, sorry, me. I'm gonna tell you what's next. I always forget that. So, a shocking story out of the New York Times. It turns out Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the radical Iranian leader from back in the day who said we should wipe Israel off the map, is working with Israel. Wait, what? What in the world is going on here? Well, Elliot's gonna tell you the story, and then I have a theory to add on top of the story as to what actually happened here.
Excellent.
Interesting, so tell us, Elliot.
All right, well, as you might recall, so earlier this year, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Mossad convinced Donald Trump that if they waged war in Iran, then they could inspire a popular revolution that would then topple Iran's current regime and they could be replaced with a pro-Western leader. So it has been widely assumed that Reza Pahlavi, former Iranian crown prince, is who Israel and the US would install as Iran's new leader, but that is not the case. We have learned that Israel has spent years turning Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Iran's former president, into their asset. Ahmadinejad governed as a hardliner who called for the eradication of Israel and even presided over mass executions of Iranian descendants. But after he left office, Ahmadinejad transformed into more of a moderate. This is at least partly because Iran's rulers would not let Ahmadinejad run for president again. Ahmadinejad told a handful of his closest associates and confidants about his ambitions to become Iran's future leader with the help of foreign powers, according to an associate in his close circle who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private discussions. Ahmadinejad became disillusioned with the Islamic Republic system after he was disqualified to run for president 3 times, the associate said, and concluded that he could not ascend to power as long as the current system remained in place. Israeli intelligence agencies were closely following the brewing rift between Ahmadinejad and the Iranian regime during this period, according to 2 Israeli defense officials familiar with intelligence assessments at that time. Ahmadinejad was reportedly going to recognize Israel if installed as president. It's also currently unknown when the Mossad first contacted Ahmadinejad. However, it is alleged that Ahmadinejad met with the Israelis in 2023, and the New York Times confirmed that Ahmadinejad met with the Israelis in 2024 and in 2025. What's even more stunning, though, than the scheme itself is how the whole thing just completely fell apart. This is per the Times. On February 28th, an Israeli airstrike hit Ahmadinejad's compound, targeting the building of his bodyguards and his armored vehicle. After the strike, according to 4 senior Iranian officials, a black Peugeot car arrived, picked up Ahmadinejad, and whisked him away at high speed from the chaotic scene. American and Iranian officials with knowledge of the operation said the car had been driven by Mossad operatives who took Ahmadinejad to a secret safe house in Iran. But the former Iranian leader was upset about the frantic rescue operation, and he appeared to be disillusioned about the Israeli plan to return him to power, according to people with knowledge of what occurred. Ahmadinejad is reportedly now under house arrest for conspiring with the Israelis. All of this seems like a pretty insane revelation. Cenk, I want to know what your theory is here.
Yeah, so wait a minute. This guy who said let's wipe Israel off the map, the Holocaust never happened, and they cracked down on dissidents, and all of a sudden would recognize Israel and would be totally pro-Israel. Now look, the official story is, oh, he was disillusioned, and because he wanted power, he decided that he was going to change all of his views overnight and go with the Israelis, and somehow that would help. Like, yes, the Israelis could install him as their puppet, right? And then he would probably crack down on dissidents 1 billion times more, etc. So that's the official story, because the Israelis saw an opening when he was disillusioned, and then they reached out to him at that point, right? Here's my story, my guess, my theory. No, he was working with the Israelis the whole time. And that's why they reached out to him now, and we're all puzzled by that, but they thought it was the most logical thing because he'd been their guy on the inside the entire time. In fact, that's why he was disqualified from some of the elections, because the Iranians caught on to the fact that he was working with the Israelis and had him under house arrest because they thought he was working with the Israelis. Now, why would the Israelis want a leader of Iran saying that to wipe them off the map? Well, because Netanyahu and the Israeli government has been trying to get us to attack Iran for the last 30 years. Now, we've shown those clips over and over again on the show where Netanyahu comes in and says, they're weeks away from a bomb. We've got to attack them now. He says that, yes, back in 2005, 2010, 2013, the whole time Ahmadinejad is in charge. So Netanyahu is saying, they're building a bomb. And then conveniently, here comes Ahmadinejad saying, I like denying the Holocaust. That's so random, right? That's like, to me, I remember when he said that, I was like, is this for an American audience? Because like nobody in Iran cares about that. They care about the current situation, right? That's like a conspiracy theory about how the Holocaust didn't happen. That's, again, kind of relevant in these circles. In Iran, they don't like Israel anyway, and they don't like, it just seems so out of place. And so Elliot, in the Mossad had bragged about how they were among the protesters in this round, right? And they said, we're in the streets with you, and we showed those. I don't know why they said it in public, but they did. And then, so that was in the beginning, before the second round of attacks on Iran. Now there's the new pro-Iranian regime marches. And in those, I believe Mossad was again in the streets. So they're saying kill Trump. That makes, I get it, right? We killed their leaders. They want to kill Iran, Trump. Could that be organic? Sure, of course that could be organic from people who are upset in Iran. But then they had signs saying kill Ben Shapiro and Laura Loomer. I'm like, they know them in Iran? That's a weird sign, right? And then they had a sign that said kill Miriam Adelson. Like, they know the funders? They know the AIPAC funding list? And then they had a sign saying kill Mark Dubowitz, a neocon no one's ever heard of. I'm like, it's Mossad doing the signs, right? So now, but that gives you their mindset. They think that everybody knows what they know. They love Mark Dubowitz, so they assume the Iranians would want to kill Mark Dubowitz, who they've never even heard of, right? So they think, I bet those conspiracy theorist anti-Semites would deny the Holocaust. So they're like, hey, Ahmadinejad, deny the Holocaust, right? And in the West, that'll make people really angry, right? So it doesn't affect anybody in Iran, but in the West, how dare he deny the Holocaust, right? And say you're gonna wipe us off the map. You're an existential danger to us, so America has to attack you. So if you wanted to attack Iran, you would want a leader who says the most outrageous things, both about Israel and America, and that's exactly what Ahmadinejad did.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I mean, it sounds plausible, because when I was reading the New York Times article, I was like, how does a leader make that kind of a 180 simply because he's angry at the Iran leaders? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I understand if you have like a family member who changes their mind about a particular issue, but you're talking about a leader who is doing one of the most dramatic shifts in their opinion ever, and all of a sudden it's just, and then he's all this, and then he just decides, actually I'm freaked out by this and I'm not going to do it. And I know that in my mind with a lot of this stuff, I assume that there's a level of like, this stuff is closed down, they know exactly what they're going to do. They're thinking about this from every possible angle. And then they freak Ahmadinejad out and he just drops out of it, and now he's on house arrest. So I think what you're saying does make sense, and it at least makes a little more sense of that New York Times article.
Yeah, one last thing on it, guys. So think about it. The New York Times says that what's more plausible is that this guy went from hating Israel and wanting to destroy it to wanting to be their loyal servant and do whatever they want in Iran. Okay, so that's one theory, and I would call that the conspiracy theory, right? The other theory is, what did Israel want from Ahmadinejad when he was in charge? To seem like a crazed radical who we had to get under control militarily, otherwise Israel and America would be endangered, right? And he would say the most anti-American things back then. That's what Israel wanted back then. What do they want now, or when the war began? They want him to be a puppet who's for regime change and then support Israel afterwards. Oh, well, that's a more plausible theory, because in both of the instances, a guy who we now know was definitively working with the Israelis and was an agent for Mossad gave them exactly what they wanted in both of those circumstances. And Elliot, super last thing on it is, it's amazing to me that all the New York Times reporters who wrote this story, that never even occurred to them.
Yeah.
They're like, that's amazing, the most miraculous turnaround. And you're like, well, put a couple of thoughts behind it. If he's a Mossad agent now, are you sure he wasn't a Mossad agent before? And they're like, oh, no, they couldn't be. Because, okay, actually I said super duper last thing. So guys, because a lot of our establishment puts out this message, whether they believe it, and I think a lot of them do believe it, or they don't, but they put out the message. Like anything where that doesn't match the official government story is a crazy, ludicrous conspiracy theory, right? But what, you're saying the Israelis that killed 23,000 children in Gaza, that having, and already flipped Ahmadinejad at this point and would have him serve as a puppet, as the New York Times now acknowledges, having him serve as a puppet earlier is out of bounds, unthinkable? Why would that be unthinkable, right? And then like the idea that they're like, and Israel doing like operations inside America, unthinkable. How could it be unthinkable? They already stole our nuclear secrets. They also already stole our uranium, our nuclear triggers, and all of our top secrets. How could it be unthinkable? So wait a minute, I'm beginning to wonder, whose side are you on? And that's exactly why I've been saying what I am about corporate media, because come on. On the other hand, look, credit where credit is due, fairest show in America, good piece by the New York Times. At least they are revealing that Ahmadinejad is a Mossad agent. Okay, we have a tiny amount of time, but can we see if we can squeeze the last story in?
Let's do it.
I say to you and I point to you, even though it's me starting it. Okay, I'm gonna do that apparently 2,000 times over. All right. You're gonna be shocked to find out that American politicians are working overtime for AIPAC. I know, you can't believe it, but Elliot's got the story.
All right, so Representatives Mike Lawler and Josh Gottheimer just introduced the Replace UNRWA with Real Humanitarian Assistance Act. Before we even talk though about what this actual piece of legislation is, yeah, we should definitely tell you who is in favor of it. Groups including AIPAC, the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, Christians United for Israel, and FDD Action are supporting the bill. UNRWA is a deeply compromised organization that is beyond any capability for reform. It's time for the US to implement a serious plan to eliminate and replace UNRWA once and for all, AIPAC said in a statement. Also, you won't be surprised, of course, to find out who exactly is funding Lawler and Gottheimer. It looks like, oh yeah, combined, Lawler and Gottheimer have taken well over $3 million from pro-Israel PACs. So with that aside, let's get into the actual legislation. The Replace UNRWA with Real Humanitarian Assistance Act would give the Secretary of State 180 days to submit a, quote, comprehensive strategy coordinated with international partners and allies to dismantle UNRWA, including a detailed timeline for the wind down, identification of governmental or non-governmental entities responsible for taking over UNRWA's portfolio, a funding plan, and a transition plan. This also comes after the Trump administration has announced that they are investigating at least 1,500 UNRWA employees for alleged ties to terrorism. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio just published an op-ed titled, "Why We're Dismantling the International Criminal Court." Rubio writes, "The ICC is backed and run by a powerful network of leftist non-government organizations, smug globalists, and hostile third world governments united by their enmity toward the US. Using all the tools at our government's disposal, working beside every ally with whom we can make common cause, we will dismantle the ICC brick by brick if necessary." He goes on to explain the ICC has clashed with the Trump administration. But what he does not mention is maybe a little bit more revealing, which is of course Israel, which is not mentioned one time in the op-ed. The ICC currently has active arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The ICC is also allegedly preparing another arrest warrant for Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich as well. It probably won't surprise you also to find out who's threatened about, or excuse me, thrilled about Marco Rubio's announcement. He tweeted, "The International Criminal Court seeks to become the unaccountable arbiter of a new global law, empowered to prosecute and arrest our our citizens at will and existentially threaten American sovereignty. We will teach the ICC the full meaning of the American resolve, reposted, of course, by AIPAC. So on one side of this, you have an agency that's been around since the middle of the 20th century that's specifically designed to provide humanitarian relief to Palestinian refugees at a time when Gaza is suffering their worst humanitarian crisis. And on the other, you have the ICC that's going to be dismantled brick by brick. Both of these have to go away because we just need to apparently do war crimes. So Cenk, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so these guys all work for Israel, and I mean that very literally. Marco Rubio got $5 million from Larry Ellison back in 2015 after Larry Ellison told the Israeli ambassador, I pre-approved him for Israel. He will serve us. And so you could read the email for yourself on Drop Site News. I'm paraphrasing it there, but he said, yes, he's going to be in favor of Israel. I sent $5 million to a super PAC, which by the way is not reported. So tip of the iceberg on when you see Track AIPAC, it's actually a lot more that goes into their super PACs. So that's Rubio, who was totally bought by Israel, and that's a fact. Mike Lawler, as we showed you, $1.2 million from the Israeli lobby. Gottheimer, $2.3 million from the Israeli lobby. Republicans, Democrats, both on the same side, not on your side, not on the side of the voters, but on the side of Israel. But this is an extra layer, right? This is them being genocide supporters, genocide enablers, terrorist enablers. The Israeli government is obviously terrorists. They're saying, UNRWA is delivering humanitarian assistance to starving children in Palestine. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. We should be able to starve them to death. And that is exactly what the vicious, disgusting Israeli government is saying. And so these guys go, yeah, starve them to death, murder the Palestinians, right? The sick sons of bitches. And an international criminal court. I'm so proud that we did the Nuremberg trials after the Holocaust. We brought justice to those Nazis, okay? But now the modern day fascists say, no, destroy anything that looks like Nuremberg or accountability or justice. Let us get away with our fascism, our terrorism, and our ability to destroy these Palestinians. And monsters like Gottheimer and Lawler and Rubio all say, yes, sir, shut up, Americans. We don't care that you don't like Israel. We don't care that you don't want a genocide. We're gonna make sure that they escape any justice, any accountability. We're gonna betray you and we're gonna serve Israel. Those are all stone cold facts. And all you see in corporate media is, problematic UNRWA. Israel says that they're not good. Well, why don't you actually do reporting, a-holes? Why don't you tell us what UNRWA actually does? Which is feed the Palestinians and give them health care. But you love the genocide, don't you? Cable news anchors in this country are also terrorist supporters. They constantly are like, UNRWA, ICC, oh yeah, the Israelis say this, the Israelis say that. Well, how about the Palestinians? Not a single cable news anchor in this country cares 1% about the Palestinians. They think that they're subhuman. An Israeli died. Oh my God, the Israelis, right? 23,000 dead Palestinian kids. They're like, who cares? Who cares? Disband the International Criminal Court. So yeah, our government and our media totally run by Israel. Now these monsters are getting rid of any and all human rights that America set up so that the world wouldn't do monstrous things like the Nazis did before. I'm super proud that we fought and beat the Nazis. But now they're saying, no, you have to support the fascists and you have to make sure that they can get away with all their genocidal crimes. So I find not just the people who are doing this, but almost all of corporate media and almost all of our politicians guilty. They're making us pay for this terrorism that Israel is doing. All right, now we're gonna switch gears completely. We're gonna take a break, and then afterwards, although the news is always, not although the news is so problematic, but because the news is so problematic, we're gonna do Operation Joy. We'll be right back.
Hot dog is my favorite meat. dog is my favorite meat.
All right, we're back on the Young Turks. Oh, wait, is this National Hot Dog Day?
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow is, okay. So check out shoptyt.com for Hot Dog is my favorite meat shirts. And on 4th of July, did I have that on with the hot dog hat? I did. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, America, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Hot dog is my favorite meat.
We even tried to get Mitt Romney on the show tomorrow just to talk about hot dogs. Not joking.
That'd be incredible.
Okay, so I haven't heard back yet. So in this Operation Joy, obviously Cenk Uygur, Elliot Morgan, the captains in the House. I'm gonna give you a perspective on the universe you might not have heard before. Interesting. So, all right, I'll start reading these and then we'll go to your comments throughout, okay? So you could write in now anything that gave you joy, anything where someone else did something positive for you, you did something positive for someone else, anything that made you happy, you got a story about your joy jar where you're putting your joy in, we'll take that as well. So let's start with tyt.com/joy. Cage Free Dragon wrote in, and this gives me joy as well. Today I renewed my membership to TYT. I've been listening for years, but haven't always had the extra income to support the channel. But today I had a candidate running for local office knock on my door asking for my signature. I was skeptical at first and politely listened long enough to hear the sincerity in her voice. After signing her petition, I asked her if she ever listens to the Young Turks. She told me that she never heard of you guys. It blew my mind she never had. I enthusiastically told her about TYT and how listening to you guys since 2011 has helped me become the progressive I am today. The fact that there are progressive candidates running for office who haven't yet heard about TYT was enough of a push for me to renew my membership and continue to help raise awareness for the channel. Cenk, John, and Anna have provided me a solid moral compass for over 15 years now, and today I felt proud by simply informing someone running for office of the TYT network. I wish more people knew about the channel, and it brings me so much joy sharing the work you guys do. So, all right, first of all, you're awesome. Thank you for doing that with your membership and for telling the candidate. But I'm not at all surprised that they haven't heard of TYT. So, because there's two different planets and two different realities, right? So there's the folks who are online, generally speaking, and then there's the folks who mainly get their news from legacy media, right? And they don't know that legacy media, is presenting the news from a certain lens, let's be polite about it, right? And not necessarily the most accurate lens or perspective. And so since they're not online and they don't watch online shows, they don't even know what's wrong with legacy media. Now, they might have a sense of it and they might be frustrated with a bunch of things that they see, certainly on Fox News, maybe even on CNN or MS Now, but they don't have a whole story of it, right? Now, Elliot, in my experience of doing this show for the last 24 years, especially the last 20 years online, in the old days, everyone was in the establishment bucket, right? As in consuming establishment media, no matter where you are on the political spectrum. So nobody knew about us. So I would say, hey, Young Turks were on Sirius Satellite Radio, and they'd be like, I think I've heard of that. Didn't Howard Stern go to that or something like that, right? In the beginning, we were on before Howard was. In fact, we were on when Sirius had only 423 subscribers. Okay, so Ben Mankiewicz and I calculated that on an average show we would have about one viewer. Okay, and we named him Winthrop, and every once in a while we would talk to Winthrop. Okay, so of course nobody heard of us back then. Then YouTube starts, but nobody knew YouTube back then, and so when I left MSNBC and went back to Young Turks Online, people were like, you're nuts, what are you doing? You had already made it onto cable news, right? And everybody knows. Nowadays, obviously a very different dynamic. And now if you're online and you haven't heard of the Young Turks, that's probably a little weird, right? Given that we're the longest lasting show, first YouTube part, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the spiel, right? So, but still, there's a whole nother world. Remember, everybody has a different perspective, right? From their perspective, mainstream media never talks about us. So I'm never on cable news, banned on all three. Anna was on CNN briefly, then they banned her, right? So we're literally banned from mainstream media. So if you're in that world, you've never heard of us. You don't know that we exist. So like, it's amazing the different perspectives that people have. But now let me turn it around and more general, not politics, not us, but general conversation about life, right? Elliot, I think that probably the #1 mistake people make, that's a big statement, I don't know if it's true, but among the top mistakes, right, is not recognizing everyone doesn't think like I do. Right, so I give funny examples from my parents. Like my dad would come home and he would say, "This guy, he did this. He is the crazy," right? And sometimes they were the crazy, right? They had done super weird things that most people would find out of bounds, and sometimes they'd just done things that my dad found out of bounds. And even back then I was like, yeah, but Dad, he probably thinks a different way, right? Like he doesn't think he's the crazy, he thinks you're the crazy. Right. And so then my mom oftentimes would like have a Turkish perspective, and she would be confused why other people don't have a Turkish perspective. I'll do an algorithmic one just for fun. So my dad didn't understand the algorithm served for you in specific. So when he first started going on Facebook, he's like, why America obsessed with Turkish news now? Okay, I'm like, no. And I feel like we would all be at least a little bit calmer if we realize, oh, okay, they grew up thinking a different thing. They were taught a different thing. They look at the world from a different perspective. They're not necessarily bad guys. They're not necessarily the crazy. Maybe they just learned something different than I learned.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar thing with anytime I talk to my dad on the phone when he's on the road, he'll have some kind of like bout of maybe just a slight bit of road rage, and he'll kind of yell at the person in front of him. But after like 10 years of him kind of freaking out when I was on the phone with him, I was like, maybe it's you, and maybe they're actually not doing anything bad at all. And maybe your blood pressure is spiking, and this is bad for your health in the long run. But I also think, just as individuals, like I sometimes will realize I didn't think a certain way about a certain thing, or that I have conflicting like viewpoints in my own brain. So if you imagine that like you as an individual have conflicting and contradictory thoughts about things, why wouldn't you extend that, I guess, to other people?
Yeah, and if you do, one, it helps you, right? Because you go, oh, okay, I get it. That brother's, from a, like, in a sense, a different reality, right? So, and nowadays that's even more stark. Why? Because reality is kind of bifurcated in a significant way, more significant than any other time that I've ever seen. So I know a ton of people, probably the majority of people in my personal life, right, that think that our point of view is the crazy. They're like, you think Israel's doing conspiracies inside America? You think they're buying off all of Congress? That's the crazy. No, I'm like, but they literally give to 94% of Congress, and they're like, oh, that sounds like a trope. I'm like, yeah, but it's a fact. Like, so, but they can't, like, that becomes a cognitive dissonance for them, right? I heard that was like a super dangerous trope, yet it's a fact. I don't know how to resolve that. Oh, I know how I'm gonna resolve it. I'm gonna reject you completely, right? So we're now totally splitting into different realities. And I'm trying to tell the people in the other reality, hey, I don't hate you, right? I understand why you think what you think. In fact, I used to think what you thought, right? So please don't hate me back. It hasn't worked so far. So not the people in my personal life, they don't hate me, right? But when I talk to people that don't know me in the other reality, oh my God, they're
in the upside down.
Yeah, they're in the upside down. But they think we're in the upside down, right? So, okay, to your point, when I was in high school, I had a friend named Scott. And so senior year, you could go out for lunch. You can go off campus because we could drive. So we would hurry, go in our cars, go get a couple of slices of pizza, come back, right? So Scott is a crazy driver. So a couple of guys go into his car, we go to get pizza. He nearly runs into 3 different people, okay? Like, and he's driving like a total maniac. And then he finally pulls into the parking lot, right? And he's like, whoa, what is going on with people today? They're just driving so crazy. Like, no, Scott, they're not driving crazy, you're driving crazy.
It's crazy out there.
Okay. So by the way, that guy became a managing partner at Goldman Sachs.
Not a NASCAR driver? Okay, good for him.
Yeah, well, now he's doing that with the American economy. Anyways, all right, we'll go to the next one. Jefferson Steelflex says, first of all, Jefferson, what kind of name do you have? You have an amazing name, Jefferson Steelflex?
Yeah.
Okay, so he says, hey TYT, so awesome finding out my birthday's a few days after Anna's. Shameless birthday plug. Hey, happy birthday! Because it's gotta be around now. So he continues, I'm a guy who's lived in Florida forever and I struggle with social anxiety really bad. I freeze up when I meet new people a lot and I have a really hard time with small talk because of this, I've spent way too much time inside, away from people who aren't family or old friends from school. I'm trying to get better for my daughter's sake because she's 10 now and I'm starting to pick up that she's picking up that trait as well. I know everyone says you're supposed to get out of your comfort zone and try new things, but anytime I think about doing something like going out, my head here kind of heavy and I wuss out, just feels impossible for me. I'm tired of walking around with RBF every day, so I've been trying lately. Last week I caught up with an old friend from my last job, and the next day I spent going around town with my daughter. Most of it was at Books A Million and Hot Topic. I really look up to Cenk and Anna because that lack of care in what people think about you too is something I'm deeply envious of, and I hope I can attain just a fraction of it one day, but today was a step forward. When politics gets brought up at work, I have a bad habit of not sticking to what I believe in because I'm usually afraid of my own ignorance, but today, I stuck with my guns about the danger that is Israel and Zionists, and it went just fine. I ended up opening a few people's eyes to it. Also, love you, TYT. Well, we love you back, Jefferson. So, look, you wrote that in and we loved it, so that worked, right? You took a step forward, that worked. So, a couple of things out of this. Number one, super proud of you. And so you're gathering up the courage to do this, especially for your daughter, has made me happier that I know that you're doing that. So thank you for sharing that story with us. Number two, baby steps, okay? Low bar, remember, low bar. Low bar for happiness, okay? Hey, I had a good cup of coffee, I'm happy, okay? I'll get to I could take that one over the top, but we'll come back to it. But also low bar on, hey, you know what? I'm a little afraid of going out or talking to other people. Well, how about I try a little bit, right? I don't need to go in and go into the public square and be like, here he, here he. No, okay. Just do exactly what you're doing and take one more step and one more step. And next thing you know, you'll look back and go, oh my God, look at all these steps I took. I think I might actually have gotten there, right? So keep it going, brother. And then now the third thing is the weird thing that I was gonna tell you about the planets in the universe.
Oh, sweet.
Okay. So look, everybody has a different philosophical take. Oh, the captain is all about philosophy.
At your service, yes.
Yeah. So what do you have a doctorate in exactly? Is it philosophy?
Yeah, I'm a scholar. It's a doctor of philosophy in what's called depth psychology, which studies the unconscious aspects of the mind that influence our everyday behavior.
Oh my God, I could spend the rest of the time talking about that.
Fun.
Oh, I love that topic. So look, everybody's got a different view on philosophy, religion, and how we view the world. I get it, and I appreciate everybody's different perspective, and I'm not trying to change anyone's, right? But I'll tell you mine, right? So I'm an atheist, so I don't believe that that there's someone who is constantly watching us. The upside of that is, I don't believe there's someone constantly judging us, right? And so judgment is a huge part of religion. Religion also has huge upsides, right? And judgment to some degree tries to keep people in line too, so they don't do crazy things like murder, rape, robbery, etc. So it has its value as well, I understand that. But since I don't believe there is either a God or a collective consciousness or really anything else that is sitting around taking notes, that basically like Santa Claus and making a list, who's been naughty and nice, right? Then what are we all freaked out about? Why are we all so worried about judgment? So, okay, Bob thinks I did the wrong thing. Well, what the hell would Bob know, right? Like, so don't be mean to others. This is such a simple rule, right? Don't hurt other people. Once you've cleared that bar, the rest is all, that's like your opinion, man, right? So now I'll go to the universe and then we'll talk it through, right? So why do I even bring up the universe? So you go out camping or out in open space anywhere, you know, where there's no lights and you see all the stars. And already the stars you see in the city are enormous, right? But when you're out camping and you see, the depth of the universe and the stars behind the stars that we don't normally see in a big city, you realize how microscopic we are. I mean, we are a small galaxy in the scope of the universe, and we're a tiny planet in a tiny galaxy in a gigantic universe. A universe so large it's incomprehensible, right? Nobody gives a shit about us. Okay, so that has a downside. Like Papa isn't necessarily gonna come to rescue you, right? But it also has a huge upside. There's no one making a list. You can go and have fun and nobody's gonna judge you for it as long as you're not hurting anyone else, right? And if someone does judge you for it, guess what? They're wrong, you're right, okay?
Win-win.
Okay, and so I think that the other part of realizing that judgment is BS is, so if someone does judge you, because you're worried about it, right? You're worried about going out, what if I make a mistake? What if I'm even genuinely wrong? Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I violated etiquette, or I was impolite, or I said something awkward. Guys, if I can impress upon you one thing, please, if you make mistakes, please, so what? So what? That means you're human. We all make mistakes. We make hundreds of mistakes all the frickin' time. Stop beating yourself up over it. If you wanna get something out of it, you know what? Like I've told you this before, when I make a mistake, I usually pause and think about what I did wrong so I could learn from it, so I don't repeat it. And number one, that's at least taking a negative and turning it into a positive. But number two, you don't have to keep stressing about it because you feel like you got some value out of that mistake, right? And number three is, well, now mistakes aren't that big a deal. And we're all like, I've seen myself make all those mistakes. I've seen myself learn from them. And by the way, when you learn from them, you get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, right? So what's your take on all this?
No, I mean, yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'll do the same thing with like negative comments online. Not that I've ever gotten one, but I imagine I would respond this way if I did. But like, I'll be like, okay, what do they have to say? Like, what kernel of actually good criticism can I take from this? Which doesn't make like the sensitivity go away, but it does make me walk away feeling like, okay, I am learning something, and it is like a little bit more productive. I was also gonna add to what you were saying about the universe, Cenk. There's this book by, I'm blanking on his name now, Swim, S-W-I-M-M-E, but it's about the cosmos, and he has this fun little exercise in it where if you can't make it out to like the woods or whatever, go out when the sun is setting and then remember that the sun doesn't actually set. And try to imagine, and it sounds silly, but if you try to imagine that you're actually kind of tilting back a little bit, not that the sun itself is going down, because that is what's more or less happening, it can give you a kind of like decentered feeling that can kind of shake you out of your malaise a little bit. Which, or you could try it and it might not work at all, in which case, figure something else out, but I think it's a fun little exercise.
So when I was 6 years old, my cousin convinced me that if we walk along the beach, we'll be able to catch the sun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You gotta get that thing.
Yeah, turns out that was a mistake. I learned from it. Haven't tried to catch the sun since. But look, the reason I brought that up is proverbially, symbolically. So what? Try to catch the sun, right? And if it turns out you can't, okay. But at least you tried, and at least you tried to do something different and interesting and improve your life a little bit. So please don't be afraid of making mistakes, and don't overhype mistakes, because if you think you're the only one making them, my God, I don't know if it's good news or bad news for you, but we're all making them on a nuclear level, nonstop.
Yeah, I would also add to what the commenter said, like, if I'm following correctly, so he's like, I don't like small talk, but also I ended up having like a really serious political conversation about Israel that seemed to open some people's eyes. So maybe those two things can work together, because maybe you don't need to worry about small talk as much, and you can just focus on having like substantive conversations with people and skip over all that stuff, and then still be polite to people, but you don't have to like, I don't like small talk either. When you're engaging with people on that level, it can be really draining. But if you switch it up and you go like, let's talk about something that actually matters, maybe not politically, it can lead to something cool.
Okay, I'm going to tell you one other fun, crazy thing. So I'm an extreme case, but this also applies to you guys. So, because you mentioned the commenters online, and I've had one or two say negative things about me, but that leads to this interesting story. So, I've been attacked by different parts of the political spectrum over these last 24 years, right? So I've had the right wing, of course, attack me. I've had the establishment attack me, and I've also had some on the left attack me. Well, so what does that lead to? I realized, oh my God. And by the way, I've had also radical Zionists attack me, radical Muslims attack me, radical Christians attack me. And I realized at one point, they all have a different version of me in their reality, right? In the movie, in their heads. So the worst death letter I ever got was from a radical Muslim. And so this is a while back, and he was convinced that I had insulted Allah and that I was deeply, deeply immoral and he had to do something about it, etc. Meanwhile, a radical Zionist thinks, oh, you're the radical, that I'm the radical Muslim. And if those two got together, they'd be like, what? No, he hates Muslims. No, he loves Muslims, right? And so, and then, right, left, there's people who think that I'm, like the guy who confronted me at the airport thought I was a communist. And then there are left-wingers who think like I'm a Trump-loving right-wing MAGA guy. So, okay, so why am I telling you this? Because guys, okay, so those are extreme cases. None of those are the real me, but they are attacking me. They are angry at me. They are judging me for a thing I'm not even that view that they have of me, right? I'm not that person. So they're attacking a ghost. But when you see it, as a human being, you can't help but be affected by it, right? Because I've had to deal with it for so long, I found a way to shut it off in my mind. But most people don't shut it off. When someone says something about you, you don't assume, well, that brother doesn't even know the real me, right? That person has a completely different perspective on me. That might not be accurate at all. Instead, what you do is you immediately take it in and go, oh, okay, and you stress about it, right? What if he's right? Well, am I a bad guy? He said this, am I that person that he described? Stop doing that. They don't know you. You know yourself better than them. You crazy? How the hell would they know you? They don't know what's inside your head. Have they been following you around for 40 years? No, you know yourself a billion times, but please give yourselves a break. So, and if you get into a situation where someone's heavily criticizing you and you think it's unfair, but it's stressing you out, remember, I'm not radical Muslim Cenk, I'm not radical Christian Cenk, I'm not radical Jewish Cenk, okay?
Just start repeating that to yourself out loud in the middle.
Right, okay, all right, Winter Scoop wrote in as well on Discord, saying, dreaming about catching that laser, and then included this video. Is he meowing?
Man, animals dreaming is the best genre.
That is a super cute cat, and I love that. So, my son did a tiny bit of sleepwalking the other day. We were in Philly together, and I came in a little bit later than him because I did a nostalgia tour because we were at Penn, and I went to Penn. And so I went and walked around the campus. He had to get some sleep before he did his camp in the morning. And then I come back and he gets up and he goes, so did we get the documents? And I'm like, which documents? He's like, and then he walks around the bed and he kind of leans over the bed and he's like, the documents to on the letters. And I'm like, we did, pro. Now go back to bed. Nice job.
Perfect.
We got all the documents and all the letters. He's like, oh, okay. And then he went back to bed.
We'll be on your desk in the morning. Just go get some sleep. It's all taken care of, bud. You did the right thing, right? You're supposed to just go along and yes and with whatever they do, right? Otherwise it just makes them lose their minds. So good job.
Okay, so give me something that made you happy this week.
Yeah, okay, so my wife a YouTuber, has gotten into miniatures. And she's been holed up in her office making tiny little olives and tiny little hot dogs, like the 4th of July celebration, and tiny little pretzels. And it seems to be bringing her a lot of joy, which brings me a lot of joy, except when I was leaving to come here, she was freaking out because she couldn't find some kind of glaze or whatever. So we have ups and downs, but that's bringing me a lot of joy. And also, I don't have a cat, but once again, my dog is the greatest dog of all time because he was a little rescue and he was scared constantly, and he still is scared of everything, but he has this like duckling duck mother relationship with me, and I love him more than anything. So,
well, tell him about Jefferson Steel Flex's good story about going out in the world a little bit. Maybe what's your dog's name?
Oh, his name is Broccoli. We call him Brock, and we take him on walks. And I've never met a dog in my life who just hates every single walk, but we do it every day. And when he's done, he's happy about it. And like beforehand, when I'm putting the leash on him, he just has this like, you don't need to do this to me. I'm like, I really don't want to do it, and I'm never gonna learn to like it. But we have a back and forth for a little while. So hopefully one day he'll get there. What I should do is tell him to stop trying to have small talk with everybody and start having more in-depth conversations with the neighbors, and I think that'll change it.
Well, Brock now has a role model in Jefferson, so.
Amen.
Yeah, do you mind saying who your wife is?
Grace Helbig, YouTube star extraordinaire, comedian, and she has entered into the, more importantly, Orange County table setting competition. So if you're at the Orange County anytime soon, you can go see her table setting, which is completely themed around monsters being under the bed, hence the miniatures. So yes, Grace and I go back from the old school YouTube days. So
yeah. Elliot and Grace are kind of old timers on YouTube. Yep. Yeah, and I was at VidCon and I was on a panel with Annoying Orange.
Oh, nice. Dane?
Yeah.
Dane's wonderful.
Yeah.
Was the recent one that you were?
Yeah, the last one. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh wow, that would have been a great panel. Who else was on the panel?
Oh shoot, I'm blanking now. I was afraid you were going to ask that question, but some other old timers, along with us. And I was like, kicking. It's like you remember the good old days of YouTube?
Yes, I do. I really do. Last year, Grace got like inducted into the Hall of Fame. That was like the first class of entrance, and it was the first time I'd been to VidCon in like however many years. And it was like nothing had changed, and yet it was just, I was like, was everybody this young the whole time? And then apparently they were. So who knows?
Okay, now you made me jealous. She's in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. So you gotta
You
gotta do maybe some lobbying.
I'm not good at lobbying, so it's one of my weaknesses. No, I'm good. Okay, I love it. We should do this more often.
Absolutely.
So guys, you're terrific. We appreciate you joining us. Oh, no old school tonight. Michael's away. But we're gonna see you tomorrow with Adam Mockler as the guest host, and then on Thursday, I believe we have Glenn Greenwald. So
and Captain Morgan.
And of course, Captain Morgan. Okay, so star-studded lineup this week. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Hot dog is my favorite meat.